Okay, good morning. We're going to get started with an invocation from Lieutenant Steve Harris, Chaplain of the Oklahoma City Fire Department. That will be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilman Bradley Carter. Please stand.
Let us pray. Lord, we give thanks to you today, first of all, for all the people in this room. We just ask for friendship and happiness as they express their concerns and desires to improve our city. And for the people at the front of this room, we just thank you for the wisdom that they have and the listening that they have, that they would listen and make the best decision for the most people in our city, Lord. Lord, we just also just lift up this pandemic to you, Lord. We just, as we see friends and family and even strangers that were worried and concerned, Lord, we just ask for relief for that, Lord, and as we go through this holiday season. Lord, let us remember the gift you gave us so many years ago, that in your desire to be closer to us. Lord, I understand that we're not having any snow this year, so we just ask that our Christmas would be merry and bright, and amen.
Thank you, Chaplain Harris. Thank you, Councilman. All right, I call this meeting of the City Council to order. We have item 3, Office of the Mayor. Item 3A, is a resolution approving travel expenses for my trip to attend the U.S. Conference of Mayors winter meeting in Washington, D.C. in January. If the council will affirm to that, we'll do it virtually. Okay, here we go. Motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously and with the required 6 votes. Item 3B, I will handle from the bottom here, and I will meet all of our Heart of the City campaign members at the podium. Kind of fit in here on the left and right. Well, our selfless city employees work to make the city of Oklahoma City a better place every single day, but that was not enough. They had to serve in another capacity, and they do it every single year, and it's our Heart of the City campaign. And we want to learn a little bit more about that, so I would ask the clerk to read this resolution.
Whereas Heart of the City is the annual fundraising campaign during which department coordinators rally city employees to raise money for local charities under 4 partner federations: the United Way of Central Oklahoma, Allied Arts, the Regional Food Bank of Oklahoma, and Community Health Charities. And whereas Heart of the City department coordinators dedicate themselves to the campaign from September to November, organizing fundraisers and rallies to raise awareness and encourage their coworkers to give back to their community. And whereas during this year's Heart of the City campaign, city employees raised a total of $525,695, more than $5,000 above their goal of $520,000. And whereas Heart of the City loaned executives and coordinators held more than 80 rallies and events to engage employees in the fundraising efforts. And whereas the Heart of the City campaign this year has 351 donors who individually donated more than $500 and are considered leadership givers. And whereas the Heart of the City's 4 partner federations are an essential part of the campaign's success, working with the city and more than 100 local charities serving people in need. And whereas by giving to the Heart of the City campaign, employees are helping the less fortunate, feeding the hungry, supporting a vibrant arts community, and funding medical research. And whereas this council desires to recognize the Heart of the City loaned executives, coordinators, and city employees for their dedication to the residents of the City of Oklahoma City. Now therefore be it resolved by the mayor and council of the City of Oklahoma City that they do hereby thank and commend city employees, loaned executives, department coordinators, and the federations for their generosity and hard work in making Oklahoma City a better place to live.
Well, why don't we go ahead and adopt this resolution real quick, and then we'll talk some more. We've got a motion and a second. Cast your votes. I would like to vote aye. Passes unanimously. Well, this is a long-time tradition in our city, and it's an amazing achievement every year. And it's also a lot of fun. Some of our best get-togethers as city elected officials and employees are these Heart of the City events, such as at the zoo this year, which I try to never miss. So I'm so grateful on behalf of the people of Oklahoma City to this extra dose of support that our city employees give to the people of Oklahoma City through these efforts. And Laura Johnson, Assistant City Manager, is one of the leads on this effort and is willing to say a few words today about that. And so, Laura, if you wouldn't mind sharing some thoughts about the Heart of the City campaign.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm so happy to be here today and be able to honor and recognize the people who've been involved in the campaign. With us today are some of our coordinators. We actually have 28 coordinators who work very hard on the campaign. I know they have a lot of fun, but without them and their dedicated efforts, we wouldn't be nearly as successful. And it is one of our best employee engagement activities, too, because everybody gets to be involved. We also have our loaned executives. The city has 2 loaned executives for the campaign. They are Mary Smith, who has celebrated her 2nd year as that and will roll off this year. And then Miguel Baez from the fire department, who was our learner this year and will be our leader in that activity this coming year. I'd also like to acknowledge the 351 leadership givers that we have. While every contribution is welcome and celebrated, those leadership givers really make a difference in our organization, and 351 of them is quite notable. I'd also like to recognize Debbie Hampton, who is here today from the United Way and helps all of us through the campaign. Her staff, really, we wouldn't be able to accomplish this without their support, so I'd like to thank them also.
All right, let's hear it for everybody involved in the Heart of the City. Thank you all so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Mayor, if I could too, I just want to say thank you to all of our leaders on the program, but really this is something that's an employee-led effort. It's like it's all about the employees. They're the ones that control it and manage it. They manage and create the various programs, and they should be the ones who get all the credit for this. And all of those that are coordinators would tell you how many people are behind the scenes making things work and how excited they get about it. It really is a time where you just feel like morale is stronger because people get to participate and people get to give. And so I really appreciate all the leaders and the coordinators, but also every employee that participates in the program. Indeed.
All right, that concludes Office of the Mayor, and now we're at item 4 items from Council. Item 4A, so this we saw previously when it was referred by the Council to consideration by our boards and commissions. It is now back, and this is ordinance to be introduced and set for public hearing on January 18th, final hearing on February 1st, amending the planning and zoning code relative to chickens and quail. Council members Hammond, Nice, and Carter are the authors of this, and I don't know if who would like to speak. Just jump in.
Well, I'll just say this is the same ordinance that we heard a presentation on back whenever it was first introduced, and it did go through the Planning Commission process and is coming back with a recommendation to approve it. But this is just the introduction, so we'll have 2 more meetings where we'll consider it, and that's all I have right now.
Anything to add? Okay. Yeah, and as identified, this is just introduction today. There'll be a public hearing at our next meeting, and then potential final vote no earlier than February 1st. So if the council would like to move, we can go ahead and introduce it today. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. All right, we will see this as indicated a couple more times, but it is now introduced. All right, 4B is a resolution amending the City of Oklahoma City Audit Committee charter to modify membership of the committee and clarify specific responsibilities and duties. The chair, Councilman Greenwell, is not with us today, but I believe maybe staff can speak
Yes,
to
the
it.
Assistant City Auditor Matt Weller is here, and he'll explain the changes that are being proposed in the charter of this committee.
It's the charter of the committee, I want to be
That's right.
clear. We don't throw the word charter around here casually, so this is not about the city charter, it's about the charter of this committee. Go ahead, sir.
Good morning. Matt Weller, Assistant City Auditor. So this, a resolution adopting the Audit Committee charter was passed in 2000, and it established the Audit Committee as a standing committee of the City Council and set forth the purpose, responsibilities, and structure of that committee. And so since that time, 21 years ago, there's been some changes that have occurred, and the original charter required that the mayor serve on the committee and serve as chair. And there were some other things as far as the responsibilities that needed to be clarified. And so on December 3rd, the audit committee met and considered these changes and recommended that they be adopted by the council. So I'd be happy to answer any questions about that.
Any questions? Seeing none, we could take up the resolution if that's the council's desire. Got a motion and a second. Cast your votes. I'm sorry? Ward 1, Councilman Carter, have you voted? No worries. Passes unanimously. All right. Thank you to the Audit Committee and staff for getting us up to date. Okay. Item 5, City Manager reports. Mr. City Manager.
Yeah, so we have several reports that are on today, no presentations. We have the council priority report for enhancing recreational opportunities and community wellness. We also have the budget transfers report on, and this is something that's fairly mundane, but there's a certain level of administrative transfers that staff can make and that I can authorize. And we provide reports for the council periodically. This is actually looking at the year end, a final year end. You know, we close our books on June 30th, but we have a lot of adjustments that are being made to finalize our financial records. So transfers will still be made to make some corrections going into the fiscal year. And so we always come back and do a final report on that. So that's in your packets. And each one, it just summarizes the transfers and the reason for the transfer. And then we have the December sales and use tax collections, continue really strong growth in sales and use tax both. We had 19.7% growth in December. For the year right now, halfway through the year, we're at 18% growth in sales tax. Just to think back, normal sales tax growth for us is about 3%. And so this is well outside of the norm. And in part as a correction, it's in part a reflection of inflation that we're seeing within the economy. There's a part of it too is federal funds that have been invested back to the community that we're seeing. There's just a lot of different factors there. And I'll tell people when we talk to them, it's like, this isn't real. And it's like, well, it's not like the sales tax isn't real. We're receiving the sales tax. It's just like, it doesn't feel like all of this is just fundamental economic growth that we could count on and build services on. We are looking at a budget amendment to come back to the council. Currently, if you look between sales and use tax, use tax is growing just as strong at about 15% growth for the year. And we're about $18.7 million above target for the year. We're looking at a budget amendment to address some issues, some of the costs that have increased for the year and some things that we need to address, and looking at coming back sometime after the first of the year to you to look at making an amendment to the budget. But right now, it's still stay the course and continue to monitor this to see where we are. But it's really good news. Things are going very well. Just very strong revenues continue right now. And that's all that I have.
All right, thank you very much. Item 6, Journal of Council Proceedings. We have items A and B we could take with one motion. Got a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item 7 is request for uncontested continuances. We do have two items on the agenda. One is 11K, that will be stricken, and 11S will be deferred to June 21st of 2022. What else might you have, Mr. City Manager?
The only other item that I have is on page 20, and this is item 11AB1. It's on claims recommended for denial, and this will be stricken from the agenda. The plan is to bring it back January 4th, but they're still working through a couple of issues on this one and wanted this just to be stricken right now.
Okay, so since there's only one claim this time, just the whole item is going to be struck.
Yes.
Okay. All right, item 8 is revocable permits and events, but we do not have any today, so we will recess the council meeting and convene as the Oklahoma City Municipal Facilities Authority, where we have items A through N we could take with one motion. Got a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. We'll adjourn OCMFA and convene as the Oklahoma City Public Property Authority, where we have items A, B, and C we can take with one motion. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. We'll adjourn OCPPA and reconvene as the council, where we are at item 9, the consent docket. We do have a few scheduled presentations. We have one at AQ, AS, CD, CP, CR and CS together, and DA. Certainly. Okay, so this is what we're definitely going to have a presentation on. AQ, AS, CD, CP, CR and CS, and DA. Is there any other item that a council member wishes to pull out for a separate vote or just a separate discussion?
Oh, no.
Yes, I'd like to pull item B, potentially for a separate vote, but at least discussion.
You said B, B as in boy? Got it. Okay.
Item U, just to like a little bit of clarity and some more information on it.
Okay.
And AE,
Okay.
I think that's it.
Anything else?
Item AP,
Okay.
Mayor, item BP and BW, just for an update. Thank you.
And what were those again? D?
Oh, no. B is in boy and P is in Paul.
BP?
British Petroleum. Okay, and then BW, black and white.
Uh-huh.
No,
Okay.
different one.
Okay, well, that's it. We'll take them in order, which means we'll start with item B. Councilwoman Hammond.
Yes, apparently I drafted an email the other day, intended to send it with some questions about this item. Found it this morning that I had not hit send, actually, but I did have some questions about this type of vehicle. And I know maybe some of these questions can be answered on the fly, and some we might need more time, which is fine. But in general, I'm just curious about how many of these vehicles do we own and how long their life expectancy is, and I guess like when did we last purchase one? And then it also describes in the memo something about maintenance being cost prohibitive essentially, and I'm just curious about if there's kind of a report or documentation about how much that would be over the rest of the life of the vehicle, and also just generally about how often we use them in what manner. I know probably one of my questions was, can we get, a brief report about what they'd been used for maybe in the last 15 times it had been utilized, which that might take more time, I realize, but I was just curious if any of those questions could be addressed before we a vote on this.
Sure. So Chief Gorley is here. I will note that, you know, when we have vehicles, and this is not one that we would purchase often. You know, we have dump trucks and all kinds of other vehicles that we purchase regularly. But we do monitor maintenance on equipment, and we get to a place where the maintenance is getting higher, more expensive, then we'll recommend making a replacement of that vehicle. This is a purchase of a new vehicle that I know is a replacement of an existing vehicle. They may, sometimes what we'll do, and the fire department does this as well, is if we have a more expensive piece of equipment that are difficult to maintain, you know, it's not like you can just run it down to the shop and get it fixed, that we'll keep a backup in place. And that, I don't know for sure if we're doing that with this one, but I know with like some fire apparatus, we'll have a certain number of vehicles that are kept in backup. And so I'll let Chief answer that and try to address the questions that you've started, but we may have to just run back through them as we address those questions.
Absolutely. Wade Gorley, Chief of Police. You pretty much explained it very well. This is our Lenco Bearcat. It was purchased in 2010. We do plan on keeping the vehicle because of the circumstances of the city and what we use it for. Having two of them will be good. But part of the problem is when you talk about repairs, when you're talking about the engine, the mechanical parts of it, that's not a problem. We can get those fixed at any diesel manufacturer that can work on diesel engines and diesel vehicles. Where it comes into problems is there are some ballistic pieces and equipment on that vehicle that are very specialized to that only the manufacturer knows how to fix that. The information is law enforcement sensitive, and so not just anybody can work on it. We usually have to bring a vendor in from somewhere else, from usually the company, or identify someone here locally that the vendor authorizes to work on it and do that work, and it takes it out of service for quite a while to do that. We use this vehicle for all high-risk warrants. Anytime our tactical unit and bomb squad and our negotiators are activated. As a negotiator, being inside that Bearcat allowed me to get closer on scene so I could negotiate with a person, you know, through the Bearcat, through the loudspeaker. Also, too, it allows us to safely put our medics in place when we serve a high-risk warrant. And oftentimes, too, just the vehicle itself serves as a de-escalation. We recently had a homicide suspect on a high-risk warrant who had made statements that he was not going to go with us without being involved in a shooting. And when the Bearcat rolled up on scene, he surrendered peacefully, and we were able to take him into custody. We also use the Bearcats in large-scale events. If you have something that happens in a large-scale event, you need something that you can get in and rescue people, especially if you have an active shooter. This allows us to do that and get officers on scene quicker. What it's also done too for us is it's oftentimes, because we are having so much special events, those are starting to come back, it ties up our Bearcat with that event. And if we have a high-risk warrant or something else in another part of the city, we usually have to rely on Oklahoma County or the Highway Patrol to help us out in serving that. So that's some of the things that we use it for, and why we're needing a second one right now. That I think answered most of the questions, but may not. I'll be happy to take any more.
Can you describe what would be considered a high-risk warrant and maybe how often we have those types of situations?
There's a risk assessment that every officer that applies for a warrant has to fill out, and it factors in things such as the subject's history. Are they known to be armed? Have they made threats? Is the residence, that's one of the things too about Oklahoma City that's kind of unique, is we have somewhat rural areas in parts of our city limits where the house may sit way off the road and there's a long drive to get up there, and so it's not safe for the officers to approach, and so that gets your risk scale up too. But just things like that factor those risks up, and they have to be that risk assessment has to be completed on every warrant that we serve.
And do you have like an estimate of how often we have when they kind of reach that high risk threshold?
I don't. It's anytime our tactical unit is activated, and all of those risk assessments, even if they don't reach that threshold, are reviewed by a supervisor, and oftentimes they go to the tactical commander too.
Doesn't this have fire suppression?
It does. The vehicle that we're ordering, it'll be unique and different from the one that we have now. We've had several, I say several, I know of at least two in the last few years where the subject that was barricaded set afire, and the fire department can't get up there. It's not safe. The person's armed. We actually have fire department paramedics on our team that are inside the Bearcat. So now this will give us the ability, we'll be right up there close, that if the subject does set a fire, we'll be able to put it out.
And how many cities our size, how many vehicles like this do other cities have?
Most cities our size will have, it could be 3 to 4. I've seen, some that have even more than that, but almost all of them, in any major city, they have at least 2, so they can deal with multiple incidents.
And how many do we have currently?
We have 1 right now.
Chief, do you know how many tactical activations we've had this year?
I don't, but I could get you that number.
Okay, thank you.
Chief, can you talk a little bit more about how this is utilized with de-escalation?
Sure. This is actually perfect for de-escalation because I was a tactical commander for several years, so I'm real familiar with how we use it. And what you need a lot of times if you're going to deliver less lethal to an individual is you have to get close enough to it to allow that to happen. So if we know we're dealing with somebody that's armed, this vehicle, we can put our officers in, equip them inside with less lethal such as the 40 millimeter and other things that we use to address those type of situations. It allows us to be right up next to that house or that car where that person may be armed, and from a protected location from within the Bearcat, they could deliver less lethal munitions as well, and that has happened, especially dealing with vehicles and also even with homes. We've used it to breach a door and enter less lethal in, also to get our robots inside so we can get a visual and communicate with the individual and see them. And so the majority of these incidents, almost all of them end with the subject surrendering and coming out to us. And having the Bearcat there just enables us to get closer so that we can deliver less lethal.
Chief, oh, I'm sorry, was I? Thank you. On that final note, would it be possible to find out a number of the instances where such interactions do in fact end with the suspect surrendering? Or end without a violent showdown?
The team was formed in 1973, and I believe we've had 3 encounters since 1973 where we've had to use lethal force.
3?
Yes.
Since 73?
Since 1973.
Okay, thank you.
And is that when we first purchased this kind of vehicle, or what were the origins of the Oklahoma City Police Department acquiring this type of vehicle?
This Bearcat went in service in 2010. Prior to that, they had they got it, I think, from Tinker. It was some kind of military surplus vehicle that was an armored vehicle, and I don't know how long they had that. That was prior to me getting on the team. But once that failed, then we went with a civilian vehicle. We don't have any more military surplus items anywhere in our inventory, and we didn't want that. This is a civilian law enforcement manufactured by a law enforcement armored vehicle company here in the United States.
So what are the distinctions between the military style and the civilian style?
It's just how they're manufactured and what they're used for, and the ballistic capabilities is the difference. If it's used in the field of battle, it's explosive rated and other things too, and some things that that the military would need for that. That this is not. It's just, like I said, it's manufactured for civilian use.
So it's more about the protection of the people inside the vehicle versus what the vehicle is capable of doing to other people?
It's more about not only the protection of the people, but allowing us to get closer to the individual that we're dealing with so that we can use items that aren't
I understand
lethal.
that part. What I'm asking is, so if there's a military surplus vehicle, the real difference between that vehicle and this vehicle is not so much what actually is on it. It's not explosive grade, not about what we're able to do with it, but literally about how it's made. Like, what is the difference?
It's not about the explosive grade or anything like that. It's just that it was never used in any kind of military use whatsoever. It's only,
But it is
only
created
designed for civilian.
But so it's but it's the same, like everything else is about it is the same, except it was just never used in a military setting.
No, it's not. It's not
So what's the
same.
difference? What's the literal difference in how it's
I'm
made?
not a military expert to tell you the difference, but I know when I look at some of these vehicles that have been repurposed, I can tell you if it's a Bearcat or if it's been used for military, but I'm not an expert in the design or anything like that.
Okay, well, then I would like to vote on this separately, because I think if you're not versed in what the difference between a military vehicle and I definitely am not versed in that, and something for quote-unquote civilian use, like this, it just makes me incredibly uncomfortable that we deploy vehicles like this on our streets when it sounds to me like they are really used for military purposes, and what we're doing now, instead of the history of the militarization of police forces, local municipal police forces, is one where they typically are military surplus vehicles, but now it sounds like we're just purchasing them from a different company, but it's not, I'm not comfortable not knowing the difference between those two different things, and so I would like to vote on this separately, and since we don't have that information.
Okay, is there someone who'd like to move
A
this item?
question.
Sure.
Is it possible to defer this to find out more information on that and to see if there is truly, in fact, a difference? I mean, are you okay with that?
Yeah.
I will say just to that a lot of the information that you're talking about is ballistic information that we can't release. It's law enforcement sensitive. And so I think a lot of that it's just, again, it's not designed for military use. It's not built for that. It's not something that you would ever use that for. But again, getting down into the weeds and the specifics of those differences and ballistic capabilities and those things wouldn't be things that we could release anyway. And Lenco probably wouldn't give that to us anyway.
I think there are some things that we can find out pertaining to the use and the differences, because I just, in my opinion, if we can understand the difference, then that allows for a more concrete vote. So I will ask that we defer it for 2 weeks and get that information that has been requested for us to be able to move forward for our next meeting.
Okay, so Councilwoman Nice has a motion to defer item 9B for 2 weeks to the next meeting. We'll bring that up virtually. There's a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Motion fails 3-5. We're back on the item, 9B. There was a suggestion that a council member would like to see this voted on separately. We could generally accommodate that if someone wants to make a motion to move item 9B. Got a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes 5-3. Okay, we are back now on the rest of the consent docket. And the next one that has any type of activity is item I. Joy Reardon. Sorry, Joy, you're up. Has signed up to speak on the Planning Commission items that we see here, items I through AB. We'll come back. Okay. Joy, you ready? We're up for where you wanted to speak about the zoning items on the consent docket.
I apologize. I was explaining something about the difference in the two vehicles that y'all are talking about. And sorry about that. I was explaining to the chief a couple different items on that. The comments on this is and previous meetings that I've brought up the issue is, and I've done a little bit more thinking on the amount of housing development that we're getting. It's unsustainable. It really is. Because the more houses we got, the less we have for manufacturing, more land we got, the less land we have for businesses and manufacturing. If we don't have the jobs, we don't have the people to supply to the housing market. And it's the same with the other, let's see, my other point on the other one that I put in. Items for required separate voting, it's the same thing. The more houses we build, the less land we have to bring in new businesses, new manufacturing, because it goes back to the old saying, not in my backyard. And I keep bringing up the point. The more housing we develop and everything else, the less land we have to bring in new ideas for jobs. Yes, service industry is great. But when you don't have manufacturing jobs, you don't have jobs for warehousing. I read a lot, business stuff, and I'm in the process of trying to get a business started. We just need to slow down on all this house developing. And it goes back to the other point is we're losing neighborhoods right here in the metro area and you can pull, Mr. Freeman, if you get time, can you pull the records for the amount of empty housing fires that the city of Oklahoma City pulls in a given week? And you'll see that in the wintertime, it increases because of all the abandoned homes that we have in Oklahoma City. And also the fact that and y'all keep bringing up the point, the affordable home market. But if we keep building further out and we keep bringing these big developers into our city and jacking up the home market, our affordable homes keep going down. That's the point that I have. And if y'all could at least talk to the OCFD about the amount of homes and businesses and stuff with the fire increase because they're sitting vacant. And also, y'all's going to bring up later about the abandoned and dilapidated buildings and homes and stuff. That list, the homeless and everything else, they already know where they're all at. And you're going to have a lot more increased fires in that situation. So that's all I'm asking.
Thank you, Joy.
Thank you. I'll be back later.
Okay. And then Councilman Carter, item U, you wish to speak to.
I just would like a little bit of kind of clarity. I got kind of confused between a couple different PUDs going on this week that we were discussing, and if the developer or attorney or whoever for this PUD is here, I'd like to hear a little bit more on it.
No, so this is just introduction, so sometimes they're not here for this. I don't know.
Okay.
Does anyone know if they're here?
I don't know for sure who the developer or the representative might be on this one.
Bob?
Bob Teener, Development Services Director. This is Tim Johnson's. They're representing this applicant. They're probably not here. Maybe David could represent them.
I think David's going to go get him.
He may just be leaving.
But typically when we bring them back, when they're introduced originally on the consent docket, they don't come and appear, but we'll have the discussions more when they bring it onto the docket where it's items for individual consideration. So that's why typically they haven't been prepared to make a presentation. or anything
And
like
that's why I realized that we had already approved this, and now we're actually doing something different to it again. So I'm just kind of curious as to why we're changing it.
this. Okay.
We can
Well, if he,
contact
We can move it.
David seemed to think he was here, so why don't we move on? We're still on the consent docket for a while probably, so we'll come back to it.
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
Okay, well, we'll stay with you. Item AE you wanted to speak to, Councilman Carter. AE 1 and 2.
Actually, I got the clarity on that
Oh,
one.
you're
real
good?
quick. Yeah,
Okay.
so we're good on it.
All right. Item AP, Councilwoman Nice, the Brownfields.
Yes, I don't really have a question, but I just wanted to bring this up as a project that we know is happening for Northeast Oklahoma City on Northeast 23rd Street. I saw one of the representatives for the movement for the Mosque. And as we know, with the Brownsfield program and a lot of our historically environmental areas of concern that we have in especially dear Northeast Oklahoma City, this is one of the projects I wanted to bring up for the process as far as us being able to now use the Brownfields program to clean up this area so we can redevelop it, and we are looking forward to what is coming for this particular part and stretch of Northeast 23rd Street and for the Mosque for their commitment to staying in the community and what they're bringing to beautify this area. So I just wanted to make mention of that. Thank you.
All right. Item AQ, we have a presentation.
Yes, Eric Winger, our Public Works Director, will give us an update here. This is just one of the items that we've had periodically when we come back, make adjustments on the implementation plan for the Better Streets program. And so I'll let Eric just give a quick update here.
Thank you, City Manager. Eric Winger, Public Works Director. So the item is another installment of the implementation plan amendments that the Better Street, Safer City Advisory Board periodically bring for your consideration. The one that we have today actually has two categories of items that are being returned. These are going to be funds returning to the budget for future allocation. The first is 3 bicycle budget items that total $237,000. Money's going back into the program to be reallocated to new or additional bicycle projects. And then the second item is 7 street resurfacing projects that have been completed. They were completed under their budgets, and they're returning $2.3 million back into the Better Streets Fund. Again, these funds will stay with the sales tax program. The Better Streets Advisory Board will make recommendations that will be brought back to the City Council for reallocation of those funds, and so the bike will stay with the bike and the street resurfacing will stay with the street resurfacing. They recommended your consideration for this item today at their last meeting in December.
Eric, I would be remiss if I didn't say congrats on a couple of those projects coming in under budget during times when that never happens these days. So,
Great, thank you.
kudos.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, I was a little distracted. Are we done with that item? Is that, okay, well, I believe we have someone to maybe speak to this item of item 9U, which is PUD 1859 at 8500 West Wilshire Boulevard. Councilman Carter had a question.
Good morning, Mark Zitzow with Johnson & Associates, 1 East Sheridan Avenue.
Good morning. I just had seen that we had already actually kind of approved a PUD. Now we're having a secondary aspect to the PUD. I was just kind of wanting some clarity on it, please.
Yes, this is a continuation of a recent PUD that had been approved for duplex and triplex. It's been a popular product, and so they're seeking to expand that and allow for more duplex development.
Okay, so this will only be duplex.
Correct.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Item 8S has a presentation.
Yes, Jeff Butler, our Planning Director, will present this. This is an annexation, and so he'll just explain the process that we've gone through with this and then what this will change.
Morning, Mayor, Council, City Manager, Jeff Butler, Planning Director. This annexation is at the very northern portion of the city at 206th Street and May Avenue. There's a map showing the location. 160-acre tract going from unincorporated county into Oklahoma City is the proposal. A little bit of history here was originally brought forward in April 2017. And the council ad hoc committee considered it at the time. The issue back then was some conflict with the Deer Creek Rural Water Corporation. So there have been some legal proceedings, and we find ourselves at this point right now with the applicant requesting again to be annexed into the city. The legal proceedings have been resolved from the applicant's perspective and our perspective. The findings of fact from the court essentially says that they found that Deer Creek Water Corporation was not in a position to require water service of this development. So as I said, we have a new position. The land use around it is there's some rural land to the east, undeveloped, some low-density residential to the west. In the city to the south, some single-family residential. This is the area designated as urban low, a suburban area of the city. And there's the surrounding, or the zoning that we have in Oklahoma City, some R1ZL and R1 to the south, mostly residential single-family style development. The site does have services. It's on the rural response time, just outside of the urban response time for emergency services and fire. So the findings and recommendations, we have, well, there will be, of course, some additional traffic. It's felt that the roads and infrastructure there can support that. The fiscal impact of the annexation is likely to be near neutral or near neutral, our analysis found. And finally, the benefits from building these units here in a more urban setting versus if we did not do this, these same units, these same households would be spread out over a larger area. So from a regional perspective, staff felt like this would be a better idea than spreading these units over a larger area, leading to air quality issues and travel time issues. It allows for more efficient service delivery as well for those residents. So based on those considerations, the Planning Commission recommended the annexation petition for your consideration, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Just looking through the staff report, I'm curious because there's a portion that describes the potential economic and fiscal impact. And this describes that revenue sources for improvements that would go beyond impact fees associated with developing this would need GEO-bond funding probably, but it also says revenue sources include impact fees and sales and property taxes. How would sales tax, like how would we get sales tax revenue from, because this does say it would just be residential development.
It's referring to sales taxes. Those residents would likely shop mostly the location of this. A lot of their sales would be, their expenditures would be in Oklahoma City. So
we're assuming that these are new to the whole region, that these are people are new to our city and not people that already live in the city and would be moving into this? Like yes, I'm not seeing that there's a
yes, which is why when we do these types of analysis, it's impossible to tell exactly how many will be new, how many will be not new. And when we do this, we kind of give a range. It's assumed that some will shop, some of the shopping will be in Edmond, some will be in Oklahoma City. Some of these residents will be, as you say, from the city already. So it's really difficult to say exactly what the expenditures will be, which is why we kind of use general language like neutral or near neutral. The applicant could say whether or not they plan to put any commercial. To my knowledge right now, it's simply a single family. That's how we assumed it would be. And that's what the analysis proposed or indicated.
The only other thing I could see with use tax is that with online sales, when you make online purchases delivered to your home, it would catch those as well, with the increase in the use of online purchasing.
Okay. Do we have sales tax revenue from building materials?
Yes.
Okay, any other questions? All right, then, we will move on to item BP. Councilman Cooper, you wish to speak to this?
No, I'd like to hear about this, actually. Different verb. Thank you, though. Just to hear an update on this. I was reading your email about it, but I feel like it might be something for the public to kind of hear more about, because it's a pretty important part of our city.
Absolutely. Thank you. As we update on item BP, this is a project agreement with the Oklahoma Department of Transportation. It's very similar to the agreements that we've entered into when we seek grant funding from ACOG, the Association of Central Oklahoma Governments. So by entering in the agreement today, it would allow this project to then be designed and constructed by the Oklahoma Department of Transportation. It allows the city to then be a partner with that process, and so we would actually be participating in a grant program to fully fund this project. This project is actually one of our traffic impact projects for the area. So this is located at the intersection of Lake Hefner Parkway and then also Northwest Expressway. So those that are familiar, if you're exiting northbound and Baptist Hospital is on your right, that ramp frequently backs up. It was identified in one of our traffic impact study reports. The project will add a dual right turn lane going eastbound, and it also does an additional lane reconfiguration to help improve the throughput through that intersection. So with your approval today, we'll enter officially into the agreement with the Oklahoma Department of Transportation as a part of the ACOG grant to complete that project. Right now, the construction is expected to begin in the summer of 2023 and be complete in the fall of 2023. So we're still more than a year away from seeing some of the construction, but the design would begin after the agreement is approved.
Thank you. I understand this particular project doesn't include pedestrian facilities, is that correct?
So it does not. At that location, there are currently no sidewalks that are in place. That does not mean that there might not be a future project to address those. But as a traffic impact project, it's focused strictly on enhancing the traffic that's currently congested in the area.
A couple follow-ups on that. The impact fees, is it the structure of the impact fees doesn't include the ability to address pedestrian facilities? I wasn't here on council when we created the impact fee structure, so I'm just curious. Is my question, do you follow what I'm asking? Okay, thank you.
I think that there are some things that we can explore. I know that as Public Works has worked very closely with planning, it appears that it could possibly include the expansion of, say, bicycle infrastructure as a part of transportation. It might be able to, but we're going to have to study that further to determine for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I think we need to look at that because it's the transportation, what did we call it, transportation impact fees?
I believe so.
In the definition, but I don't recall the definition that we created for that, if it included pedestrian, like sidewalks.
Sidewalks, yeah.
Like crosswalks, things like that, engaging with the street. I think that's a possibility, but I think we'd have to look at that to make sure that'd be something that we could do. And really in all of these, whether it's in parks or trails or in streets, it's really about expanding capacity. So if we did have that ability with pedestrian, clearly new sidewalks do expand capacity.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. I'd like to, of course, learn more about that. Just a couple more follow-ups, if I might. One then is, of course, to your point, no sidewalks exist there currently, right? Right as that construction will conclude in 23, though, the BRT will become a reality, up and down, particularly that stretch right there. And as I've long expressed an interest in the connectivity for folk who would be leaving from Portland, where that grocery store is, right, to be able to walk eastward safely on Northwest Expressway, because there will be sidewalks just to the east of this construction project, right? So there's almost like a no man's land that's going to exist. Lack of sidewalks on where Clark's Barbecue and that row of restaurants are, no sidewalks. That's not coming with the BRT project. And I've been advocating strongly for it because if I'm a worker, right, and I'm getting off at 56th and Portland, which will be one of the BRT stops, but I work at Clark's Barbecue, I'm about to be walking in the grass along a 6-lane expressway. And that concerns me deeply. And so Embark's been trying to figure out how to address that gap of where sidewalks will not be as part of the bus rapid transit project. So I'd like an update on that, like where are we with the sidewalks for that area? And then B, if we find out that the traffic impact fees can in fact allow for pedestrian facilities. I mean, bike lane, we're talking, that's probably not going to happen in my lifetime, but some good sidewalk would be really great there to connect people between where they're working, where they're shopping, where they're eating, and this bus rapid transit to ensure that that bus rapid transit is as successful as possible. So I'd like to know then, if we find out that those facilities are possible in the impact fees, what could we do to try and see if they could be a part of this project? If not, then my follow-up is construction with this project. Am I understanding that it wouldn't preclude down the road being able, as funds allow, to put in that sidewalk infrastructure? That'd be my final concern there.
Yeah, and I think a couple of follow-ups. So if there were sidewalks present at this location or any of the locations that we're doing traffic impact updates, especially at intersections, we would be required to update them to the minimum ADA standards with new ramps, new crosswalks, you know, some of the pedestrian push button features and things. There's just no sidewalks at this location, so they're not included. But I refer back to the Bike Walk OKC plan that planning has put forth that the council has adopted is really our sidewalk master plan moving forward. I would need to check that plan to see if sidewalks are included at that location, but we are executing a master plan citywide for sidewalk expansion projects. And they really rely on current and future bond issues, maps for, you know, anything that may come down the road. But we're going to stay active on that and make sure that we're improving connectivity and walkability citywide.
Eric, I drive this area a lot, and I see the congestion backing up onto the highway. Have you looked at the design, and are you comfortable that the design will alleviate the backup problem, especially around 9 o'clock in the morning and 5 o'clock in the afternoon?
So that is the purpose of the design. So they've got the preliminary indications. So what's not is the final design is the only thing that's remaining. So with the final design basically completing in this next year under the guidance of ODOT as part of the grant project, it'll confirm that. But that is going to be their goal as well. And I think it's why it scored so high on the grant process.
It's a good project. Thank you.
To clarify my questions, to make sure I get some, we can follow up on them. First, I didn't even ask this question earlier. When did we approve Bike Walk OKC? What year? Was it before 2018? It was 2017. So to Director Winger's earlier words, we hadn't received yet the Bus Rapid Transit federal grant. That was a December 2018. So when Bike Walk OKC, when we created that, it did not take into consideration whether or not pedestrian infrastructure would need to become a reality for Northwest Expressway. So that's why me bringing this up as the council person for Ward 2 right now and as a transit trustee is very critical at this juncture. That's my first comment. Secondly, we're doing, as you all know, revisions to Bike Walk OKC. In those revisions, different residents from around the city have added what we might have missed. And as one of those residents, and as a trustee and as a council person, I have added this particular area for consideration now that we have, in fact, received a $14 million matching grant from the federal government to do a bus rapid transit, and voters approved the other $14 million in the 2017 bond to make this project, to ensure its success for a $28 million investment. That pedestrian part is important. We can't miss this moment is what I'm suggesting. So my clarifying questions, I'd like to know where Embark is in trying to figure out how we can get sidewalks from Portland to Independence. That's my first question. My second question is, as this project finds itself under construction, let's say we can't use any of the traffic impact fees to do any sort of sidewalk consideration within this project, then I'd like to know whether the construction which comes from this project will get in the way down the road with the implementation of should funds become available for pedestrian infrastructure there. Do you follow my questions? Okay.
So you're asking if the construction that we're doing right now on this project would impede our ability to have sidewalks or pedestrian access?
That's right. Thank you.
I think we can answer that now.
Yeah.
Okay.
It won't. So if a sidewalk project is coming forward in the future, I mean, it would be designed and we'd have an engineer hired to work it through the intersection with new sidewalks, new ramps, all the pedestrian facilities that would be required.
Thank you. So then the only two questions we would need later clarification on is where are we at with Embark and trying to get sidewalks in this particular area? And then what do we know about the traffic impact fees in terms of their structure and the different pedestrian facilities?
Yeah, my recollection is that we couldn't use it for sidewalks, but I just need to confirm that. I
Thank
want to
you.
get back with legal and confirm that.
Appreciate you, City Manager. Thank you to Director Ringer.
Okay. BW?
We just get to hang out today. I just wanted I read your email update on this, but I think this is a pretty important project too. I remember as I'm sure residents do, there were memes a few years ago when that bridge collapsed there, and people were very concerned about the direction of this area. So it sounds like we have a good project coming, and I just wanted to hear you update our residents on it.
Thank you. So this item BW is an allocation of $400,000 from 2007, an additional $252,000 from the 17 towards this project at May Avenue and Northwest Expressway. It's a project that actually originated in our 2017 bond issue. When we did the initial studies, we found that the funding that was in the bond was not sufficient to actually address the full project. The original funding was $1.9 million. Different alternatives are being considered. We're looking at bridge replacement. The bridge is actually at a low chord height, which is why it's been struck several times in the past. So one of the goals is to improve its safety by either raising that bridge or looking at some alternative designs. Knowing that the bond issue was short, we entered into an agreement with ACOG similar to the last agenda item, where this project is now currently in design by the Oklahoma Department of Transportation. But because it's grant funded, we were able to increase the construction cost to $9 million. So we now have sufficient funding to do multiple options. Now, the preliminary report for this project is not yet complete. It's being prepared and is going to be ready and brought back to the City Council in the spring of 2022. But what we're asking for today is the allocation of the additional funding so that we can secure the grant. It's the city's match that's required to secure and up the project budget to the $9 million mark. More information to come. We'll bring options in the future of what's possible and have the council make a recommendation on the ultimate solution.
First, I just want to say congratulations on all the different dots you all have had to connect to make this happen and to get that increase in funds. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
My second question is, what coordination are we doing right now? Again, just thinking of that bus rapid transit, what coordination are we doing with Embark to make sure that that bridge functions as something that is going to, of course, I trust all your engineering stuff with the safety thing. So my follow-up concern is more about the pedestrians who might be coming off of May Avenue to get to one of the bus rapid transit stations. Just making sure that that intersection, which right now is like a Rubik's Cube of the lack of pedestrian connectivity, right?
Right.
What coordination are we doing with Embark as the bus rapid transit plans are nearing their final phase?
So the bus rapid transit's obviously a bus project. The bridge projects is a bridge safety and enhancement project. The two consultants are working together. I mean, they're knowledgeable of the different designs. And so they're going to be coordinated when we do get the final solution.
Okay.
From a pedestrian standpoint, that's going to be one of the considerations.
Okay.
Again, I'm not going to have an answer for you today, but I think in the spring when we bring that preliminary report forward, especially for this project, the May Avenue and Northwest Expressway bridge replacement, we can answer those questions then.
Thank you. And then my only final note is just to say, I know you're from Oklahoma because you referred to Integris as Baptist Hospital earlier, and I really appreciated that moment. So anyway, thanks.
Sorry. Okay, we have a presentation on item CD.
Yes, so I'd like to introduce to you Eric Winger, our Public Works Director, to continue his presentations. This ties back in part, this is tied in with Better Streets, but we did a budget amendment last year to allow for some additional investment in streets and put that money through the Better Streets process to let that committee weigh in on the priorities that they wanted to bring back. We now have that. It's going to combine with some other funding from Better Streets, Safer Cities, and I'll let Eric present the recommendations on these projects.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. So we have been working very closely with the Better Street Safer City Advisory Board on the council's request to get their recommendation on the best use of $9 million in arterial street resurfacing dollars. We had actually looked at several scenarios, but early this month they did make a recommendation for this option one that I've actually put up on the screen that you'll see here today. They considered two different options in their final discussions. Looking at the $9 million, recall that the Better Street, Safer City is looking at city streets citywide. They've also used a prioritization methodology when they look at city streets that's considering their condition, they're considering the overall traffic volume, and then they're also looking at the number of work orders that city crews are having to go out and make repairs. So we're able to actually rank all city streets. And so when they were looking at the different considerations and the list that you have that's on screen now, these are the next top 8 projects in Oklahoma City that score the highest on that prioritization list. Now, it exceeds $9 million, and so this was part of the consideration for the Better Street, Safer City Advisory Board. The two options that we put in front of them, there are available dollars in the Better Street, Safer City sales tax program to fund the difference. And so the $4.6 million that's necessary to fund this option, the board considered that when they made that recommendation to you to accept this list. We would be bringing back then, if the council approves this item today, a new implementation plan amendment that allocates some of those remaining street arterial funds to supplement the $9 million in general obligation, or excuse me, $9 million in the general fund for a total of 13.6. Now, there was a second option that they considered. I don't have it on screen here, but it was an option that was more close to the $9 million. Staff looked at the entire prioritization list, and we had to go quite far down the list to find projects that met that $9 million threshold. We also looked to distribute them geographically, so they weren't the highest priority. Again, that list totaled $9.4 million, so it was only a $400,000 addition to the $9 million general fund. But at the end of the day, the board voted and recommends to the council the acceptance of this list, the highest priority street arterial projects at $13.6 million. And we'll be bringing back an item in the next month, possibly February at the latest, for an implementation plan amendment to cover the cost difference.
Question.
Yes.
As we look at one street in particular that I see is happening in Ward 7, East Wilshire Boulevard, Broadway extension to Kelly, I'm more concerned with sidewalks than the street resurfacing. And the reason I say that is because I have residents that walk in the street. So is there a way for us to figure out the best use of this particular area? And I get phone calls very often, and when I receive those calls, it's for people requesting that don't even live in the area that we get sidewalks because they see the people walking in the street as well. So while I'm very excited, I am very concerned at the same time that now we're still going to have people walking in the street.
So when we go back and we look at the Better Street, Safer City program, there were the 5 project categories. We had the street resurfacing, we had the sidewalk, we had the trail, we had the bike, and then we also had the street enhancement categories. Very early in the program was set up with budgets for each of those categories, and so the money stayed with each category. The monies that were being presented today are really in only the street resurfacing category. They have recommended, and we have completed miles and miles of sidewalks under the sidewalk category, but I think we can take your recommendation, look at that also against with the Bike Walk OKC plan, and start to put a focus on that. But to make a sidewalk a street project, that's been something that the board and the council hasn't previously done. The street has been streets, and the sidewalks have been sidewalks, and the street enhancements have been street enhancements.
Well, what would it take for this to be that? And trust me, I can read arterial street resurfacing projects lists. I read that very clearly, and that's why my concern is because of both.
So any of the locations that you see here today that have existing sidewalks as a part of the Department of Justice, we will have to upgrade any existing sidewalks to make sure that they're fully compliant, but it does not construct new sidewalks. So on new sidewalks, we're simply going to need to look for a funding source and create a sidewalk project for that location.
Trust me, I understand.
Okay.
I'm asking, is it possible for us to look further to find the funding if we're going to commit dollars to one project? How do we look at ensuring that we just complete all of it at once because of the concern? And if I need to maybe petition the neighborhood and the neighbors to make sure that their voices are heard on this, I'm happy to do that in order for that to be very clear and evident that this is needed for this particular part of our community.
Let me work with Jeff Butler, the planning director, and see where the sidewalk prioritization falls, since it has its own prioritization categories and methodology. And we can get back with you on that information. We need to look at that sidewalk project list to see where Wilshire falls on that list.
Thank you. I know it's not impossible to do, so that's why I'm asking that we figure out what ways we can do it. I appreciate that.
Well, and I think to sort of kind of add to that line of questioning, you know, when I saw this, my first thought was, how do we get $9 million from the general fund to supplement some of the bike and sidewalk projects as part of Better Streets? And if there's an opportunity to explore also adding to those to help, you know, finish some projects or supplement some projects, I would really be interested in seeing what projects could be actualized if we're kind of running low on something somewhere.
And to the point of what she's saying too, I'm thinking of the conversations that we've been having as far as ARPA funding with infrastructure. And it seems like these types of funds could help supplement these types of particular projects. And not to say all of these projects on this list don't need other individual needs, because I'm sure they probably do, especially if they've been on this list for so long. There may be some other things that we need to look at as well. Not just that arterial street resurfacing. So that is also just something I would like for us to figure it out while we're doing it, instead of having to come back 5 years, 3 years and saying, oh, we forgot to do that, or we need to improve this now, instead of doing all those things up front. And I know that makes sense.
Yeah, we can definitely take a look at that. We've got, with the ARPA funds, we're still working through the list right now. I want to say on the city side, looking at the infrastructure needs, there's about $400 to $500 million in projects that we're looking at that have been submitted that we're prioritizing, and so obviously there's $78 million that's there. $400 to $500 million. Not every project's going to get funded, obviously, just like when we run into a bond program. But we can evaluate that and try to include these as well. If there's specific locations that we'd like to incorporate and try to get prioritized, we can certainly include that in the discussion.
Okay. Now we have something that doesn't involve Eric Winger, and that is the presentation on item CP.
So Doug Dowler, our budget director, will give us a presentation on the annual public safety sales tax report from fiscal year 21. You know, this is from fiscal year 21, and you think, well, you know, we're halfway into fiscal year 22 right now, but we align these when we finish our financials at the end of the year, and that's why the timing is like this.
Right. Yes, Doug Dowler, Budget Director for the city. And just as a little bit of background, in the 1990s, a lawsuit over the public safety sales tax was settled with a journal entry of judgment. And part of that journal entry of judgment required that City Council adopt a resolution each year about what's going to be spent out of the police and fire sales tax. And then at the end of each year, that we produce a report on what was actually spent to make sure it complied with that resolution that was adopted by Council. In addition, the City Auditor's Office is also required to review the report, make sure it's accurate, and that that all of the expenses were consistent with that resolution. And you will see at the end of the report here is a letter from the City Auditor expressing the opinion that the report presents the information fairly and that the report complies with the journal entry of judgment. Just going to touch on a few of the highlights in the report. On the first page, in the bottom right corner, we've got kind of revenues and expenses. And again, these are on what's called a GAAP basis. This is what's in our financial reports on an accounting basis. And it shows our ending fund balance. That's not really how much cash we had. That includes a lot of accruals and things like that. So our balance in those funds is lower than what's shown here if you're looking for cash at the beginning of the year, but it's still substantial. In the police department, $15.9 million was the balance at the end of fiscal year 21. $13.7 million was the cash balance in the fire sales tax fund. The list of positions that's there in the bottom right totals 1,201 uniform positions for police, 999 for fire. That does include, last year you may recall, we had a number of positions that were frozen in police and fire, so we kept those positions, but we didn't have the funding for those during the COVID pandemic. We had 34 frozen police positions and 21 fire positions that were frozen that are part of that total. The next couple of pages provide just kind of an overview of the types of expenses that were made out of the police and fire sales tax fund. There's a detailed list on the left side of the types of projects, and then the pie chart gives you a generalized overview of how those expenses were made. You can see the vast majority is for additional police officers and recruits, and then increased police officer salaries and benefits. And that's what we call the wage adjustment project. And that allows basically the fire sales tax fund to help pay for pay increases for all police officers, whether they're in the police or fire sales tax or in the general fund. That wage adjustment is a transfer to the general fund to help provide for wages for officers there. As you look at the fire sales tax fund, again, very similar distribution, primarily for additional firefighters and recruits and increased firefighter salaries and benefits. So expenditures in the fire sales tax fund, $47.4 million last year. In the police sales tax fund, $43.8 million. And so that's just kind of a quick overview of what's in the report there. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Doug.
Thank you, Doug. Now, CR and CS.
So Kenton Soodle, Assistant City Manager, is going to give us a presentation on these. These are two of our first agreements that align with our ARPA plan, and I'll let Kenny make a quick presentation on these.
Good morning, Kenny Soodle, Assistant City Manager. As a reminder, back in September of 21, the city adopted our plan for our Arpa funding, and we had three major categories. Those categories were, as a reminder, it was $122.5 million that we received. So our categories were $78.5 million for city revenue shortfall and projects, $37 million for negative economic impacts, and $7 million for response to the public health emergency. So today, these two items in front of you, CR and CS, are the first two contracts coming forward under that plan. So the first one I want to talk about is CR, which is an agreement with City County Health Department for not to exceed $5 million. And this is, under this agreement, there's several things that this can be used for. It can be used for COVID-19 tracking and analysis and some of the software that might be associated with that. It can be used for permanent and mobile health centers, whether that's, and I'm going to have Phil Maytubby talk in just a second about what they're planning on doing with that. And that's really the bulk of what is going towards that. We think about 4 of the 5 millions going in that area. And then also it can be used for communications, information, outreach, and that sort of thing. So Phil, do you want to kind of just talk a little bit about what some of the plans are for this? And we do have a short PowerPoint with just a couple pictures if you'd like to see.
Good morning, everybody. Always good to see council. So you got that loaded, Kenny? So basically, we wanted to talk to you about the utilization of the funding that would be provided through this. You know, the original intent of both CARES and ARPA was not only for response, but for future planning, for us to be better prepared in the future for things that we either can anticipate or maybe can't even anticipate at this point. So we have a couple of options that we want to bring up to you. I mean, this is what's included in this $5 million. One is the ability to purchase land and to build another mobile or a drive-through vaccination site in South Oklahoma City. So we used our data and about 12 different criteria to figure out where this needed to go. So the proposed location is at Southwest 59th and May. We have a lot of data that to pull that up. So there's a lot of reasons we need to be in that part of town. That's one of our areas of highest impact. It has been and it's been persistent through COVID. But we also have a lot of other health indicators once we get out of COVID that will make this a good location for us to be as well, because we have higher per capita death rates and other things related to mortality in that area. So you guys might have seen already, but we also have mobile units that are going to be put together. These are going to be really very good mobile units. We've been planning on these for 6 months. So these are very nice ones. They're ones that people will want to go into. One of the reasons that we determined that we needed mobiles was through our COVID response. We figured out that we have a zip codes where only half the people have transportation. So at this point, we feel like we need to have the ability to take services to the people, whether that's vaccination, whether that's screenings for other things that are out in the community. It's okay. So Anyway, these are good long-range things that we are planning for the utilization of this funding, so. Okay, now that I've done it, let's go ahead and talk. So this is one of the indicators that we use to locate this site. So this is our COVID-19 death rate. So you can see it's in an area that's of high impact. If you look it up where our other site is located, it's in 73111. So that kind of makes sense for why we're going south. Go ahead and go to the next one, Kenny. So this is a mock-up of the mobile. This is something that we'll be able to do both clinical application and non-clinical application out of. So whether this means we're going to go out and do community screenings for high blood pressure or diabetes or whatever that may be, we can also run our community programs out of these as well. And these are also going to be telemed equipped. So at some point we may be working with partners on this. Next one, please. This is a little bit of a mock-up on that. So as you see, there's just a lot of uses that we can use this for. And any place where we can find about 50 feet to park, we can park these. So it's a good location. Go ahead, Kenny. So this is part of our vaccination. You guys probably did see that we did hit 1 million vaccinations in this county. We still exceed the national average on vaccination rates. And we are also below the national average on per capita death rates for this county. So, you know, the activities are working. We just need to keep them up. And this is for the data dashboard. As you guys are aware that we have been tracking with sewage surveillance. That was one of the original projects that came out of the START Coalition and the CARES funding through the city of Oklahoma City. So it's been a very, very good project. That's it.
I have just a quick question about the drive-through sites, and this is always, and you mentioned zip codes where a lot of folks don't have access to a vehicle, and this is always my brain, and 59th and May is like right along a great transit corridor. Curious, with those sites, can people also just walk up? Is that an option, or do you have to like be in a car to go through that site to get a vaccine?
No, you can walk up, and
Okay.
that will be designed into the new one as well.
Okay.
Right now, they are designed primarily for car utilization because that's where people are comfortable. They actually are
Sure.
pretty comfortable getting vaccinated in their cars. I know a lot of us have already done that here, so.
I did it. It was awesome.
Yeah, I've seen picture, like people seem to, someone even actually last night said it was so quick and fast on Twitter. I was like, oh, that's great to see that people are doing that. The other thing, well, and sort of connected to that, because I know 59th and May is where the Almonte Library is, and that was kind of apparently a surprise to a lot of folks that became like a really active library location. So it's exciting to see this, because I think it probably fairly similarly we'll see a lot of activity there where, you know, maybe we might have been surprised, or maybe if we didn't have these funds, would have had to put off putting something like this here in that area. So I think that'll be really great. Appreciate it.
This is directly adjacent to that property. And then this actually sits on the corner of 3 different ward districts. So it'll be a nice location. Any other questions?
I had a couple, if you don't mind, Mr. Chubby.
Sure.
Chubby. Thank you for the information. I know one of the things as I heard with communication, how are we going to incorporate the health literacy aspect for this? And also, will some of this money, are we able to transfer in efforts to build our community health workers because of those higher zip codes that we see? And I have another question after that.
Sure. So all these will, if they're not going to be directly related, they will be, you know, off to the side related to them. We already have funding directly from CDC and HHS for the community health worker programs, and we're still seeking more funding on that. We see that as a real inroad to the community with the community health worker program. Right now, we already have around 30 community health workers that we plan on putting out to the public. So those people can onboard people for Medicaid expansion. They can do all kinds of, they can do the screening that we want to do. We're really taking an aggressive approach to trying to get our population more healthy.
Thank you. And The reason I bring that up as far as our community health workers program is because of the fact that it is, with the grant, it's a wage where a lot of our folks in the community can live, you know, as far as the salary that it is. And my other question, as I was hearing Councilwoman Hammond talk about people walking up, and maybe this is a conversation we can probably have with Embark in our city, is what would it look like for us to work through a process of those who may not have the transportation that's adequate, but use the bus. And if they show their card for that day, their vaccine card that day, their bus ride may be free, you know, as far as us being able to use that funding for these types of measures. So is that a possibility for us to do as well?
Sure, even if it's not possible under this funding, which I think it is, it's possible through other funding sources. And I'll be honest, we're funding some of this directly out of our budget that we have for city county.
Well, I'd love to get more information on that so we can work with you all to share it, so people realize and understand that if there are barriers, we want to figure out how to overcome them. And it starts with being able to have access. So I'd love to help you with that information. And I know, my last question, I've been following the conversations as far as the sewage is concerned, and I think, to me, to your point, that was a game changer for us to be able to test the sewage and see earlier or early on to predict what was coming in certain parts of our communities in our city. You talked about flu the last couple weeks as far as the sewage is concerned. Where are we with that? I know we're still talking about the COVID-19, but where are we also with that?
Sure, we've been on a steady rise for both flu and for COVID. So that's kind of where we're at right now. We know it's predominantly the A strains of the flu. It's about 77% A strain at this point. So, and you know, we're still awaiting Omicron on the COVID side. So it won't be long.
I mean, realistically.
Realistically, it's probably here. Every state around us has
Right.
Omicron. So, and you'll probably hear some announcements coming out of us fairly soon when we get confirmation on some of these things. That it?
Microphone, Cooper.
What? It is.
Now it is.
But I didn't even, I don't know.
Oh, she turned it on.
My second hero on this council this morning. Thank you very much. Which is what I wanted to say to you. Thank you very much.
Oh, well, thank you very much, James.
It's really just been an honor learning alongside you for the last 2 years. And I just want to send as much well wishes to you, your team, and your family for some rest. More work, but rest. So that's all.
We appreciate all of you greatly.
Yep,
And
thanks, Bill.
Appreciate your support.
Appreciate you.
Thank you, Phil.
So the next item CS, is under the category of response to the negative economic impacts of COVID under our plan. And this is a agreement not to exceed $1 million with the United Way of Central Oklahoma. So this is a way of us providing funds to them to help make up some of their negative economic impacts they've had as an organization, in order so that they can use that to help, you know, some of the various different nonprofits that they are involved with. So it's something similar to what we did in CARES. And with that, be happy to answer any questions. I know we have representatives here today if you have any questions of them, but it's really pretty straightforward on that one.
I guess.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. I guess my question would be, as far as filling the gaps, the criteria that would have to be met for maybe some of those agencies that are under the umbrella of United Way.
So 2 different things, and I don't know if someone can maybe speak to that. Yeah, if you don't mind, Debbie. So this really, under this particular contract, is just providing funding to United Way to make up their shortfalls that they've had, or it can also be used if they have particular expenses that are directly related to COVID mitigation. As far as where they all take it from there, I'll maybe let you say a few words.
It's good to see you again, Council and Mayor. I was sitting back here thinking every year we should come and talk about what United Way agencies are doing. And Phil, you know I'm going to be calling you on how we can work with the nonprofits. But what we're looking at is our overall campaign loss for our agencies in allocable dollars was 11.2%. Although there were some COVID funds that helped with COVID-specific, our mental health, our housing stability, crisis intervention, and education employment and such took a hit. And so that's what we want to do is keep our agencies strong. You are all aware, I tell you this every year, we touch 1 in 3 Central Oklahomans with services, and we've got to keep the services up just looking at the numbers of what we're dealing with. I hope that addresses what you were asking, Councilman Nice.
Well, maybe I'm just misremembering. I had a recollection that there was going to be a process by which non-partner agencies could apply for the previous funds, and I received a report that it doesn't sound like that was the case, and I'm curious, and maybe, again, I might just be misremembering that, but I seem to remember there was a conversation about what about those nonprofits that aren't partner agencies, and I guess I just have this same question about if we're receiving inquiries from other nonprofits that may not be partner agencies of the United Way, how should we be directing them to staff to discuss potential ARPA allocations or applications?
Councilman Hammond, as I know, we partner with all nonprofits, and there are some extremely good nonprofits that are not United Way agencies, but these are for 50 United Way partner agencies that specifically work in the city of Oklahoma City. So these funds will help 90 programs within those agencies. I do feel like with our agencies, they're constantly working with other agencies and collaborating with government and other nonprofits, but you are correct. This is for our partner agencies and the loss they took.
Now, I might also add, we'll be bringing another contract back for the Alliance for Economic Development that's running our small business assistance program, and that's also intended to be open to nonprofits. We're still working on that process and working on the criteria. That's also something that we did under CARES as well, where both for-profit and nonprofit.
So maybe that's what I'm thinking of was that allocation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And we'll make sure,
helpful.
I know I've heard you all loud and clear in our discussions about making sure we market that and put information out on that, and so we'll definitely make sure that we do that.
Okay, thank you.
And maybe there's a way to visit again to understand, for all of us to maybe get feedback from those businesses and nonprofits that are smaller in our communities to understand what their barriers have been.
Okay.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Debbie.
Thanks, Debbie.
And finally, item DA, presentation.
So David Todd is here, our MAPS program manager, and I'm going to let David just take this and introduce this project. It's preliminary plans that we have on the Fairgrounds Coliseum, and I'll let David introduce the project.
Good morning, David Todd, MAPS program manager. This is a MAPS 4 project that the architecture was funded through MAPS 3, some of the excess collections. Really pleased to be bringing you the preliminary report, and Travis Pauley is here today from Populous to give you a presentation on the preliminary report and show you what this building is going to look like. So I'd like to turn it over to Travis.
Thank you, David. Thank you. Happy to be here in front of all you today to present this project. We're really excited about it and proud to be a part of it. It's going to be a great project for Oklahoma City, so thank you for having us. We'll go ahead and get started here. Just a quick frame of reference. We all know where the fairgrounds are, but just a few things to point out. We've got I-44 running down the west side of our site and I-40 on the south side. Our main entry to the arena area is there on May Avenue off of Gordon Cooper Boulevard, where you see the orange arrow right there. As we zoom into our site, we all know about the Norick Arena, built in 1965, has the largest economic impact of any publicly owned facilities in OKC, hosts over 250 event days a year out there. We know the horse show capital of the world, so a ton of those equine and livestock shows, as well as state basketball tournaments, wrestling tournaments, and all kinds of events that go on out there. about 8,000 seats in the arena and currently has reached the end of its functional life. The new Coliseum is planned to go right up against the current arena. The intention of that location is to keep the Newark Arena operational throughout the construction of that new Coliseum. We have long-term contracts out there, 10-year contracts and things like that that go on that we don't want to disrupt. So the goal is to keep that operating just like it does all year round while that new Coliseum is being built. The other restriction that you see there, kind of guiding how far out we could pull it, as well as the shape of that new Coliseum, is those utility restrictions that run on the north and south side of the new Coliseum. As you can see, it overlaps the Newark just slightly, so this will be done in phases. Phase 1 will be the selective demolition and temporary construction of some of the egress and entry elements there on the Newark Arena to relocate those while the new construction occurs. Phase 2 would be the construction of the new Coliseum, as well as a temporary pathway to get from the Super Barn to the new Coliseum during the demolition of the Newark. Phase 3 is the demolition of the Newark Arena, as that's when that temporary path would be used. And Phase 4 is the finish out of the site work between the new Coliseum and the Super Barn, as well as the reconstruction of the show offices that are currently housed within the Newark Arena. I'll also point out right here on this slide while we have it up, because you can see the area. Councilwoman Nice brought up a great question last time that we presented this about the parking that's going to be taken or covered up by this new Coliseum. There will be a new parking lot, not part of this project, but as part of a separate project located directly kind of southwest of the Coliseum right there, where you see those three kind of buildings just on the other side of the railroad track that will accommodate and offset that parking that's lost by the new Coliseum. So don't want to point that out. As we zoom into the site plan, you can see here the site plan of the new Coliseum. The built structure is in orange there. You can see the entry coming on your right screen from Gordon Cooper Boulevard. You're going to have a really nice entry sequence looking right at that new entry to the building with the Bennett Center right there on your right. It's really going to cap off that entry from Gordon Cooper Boulevard nicely. We've got an outdoor flexible space on the north side that will connect to the fair and the Bennett Center. On the south side is kind of our utility side where we've got our loading dock and chiller yard, as well as some nice green space there to buffer that from the public parking area. And then over there on the west side is where we've got kind of a little bit of a blank slate where we have we know that the future connector building will connect the Super Barn to that Coliseum. So we haven't done a lot of work there because we don't want to do wasteful work that will have to be removed when the connector does come into play. And then a nice big large sod pad there for setup of pinning and other type of events that the livestock and equine shows utilize. As we zoom on into the floor plan, we've got two levels on this building, the event level, which we're looking at right here, and the concourse level above that, which will be the public access to the seats. On our event level, I'll just quickly walk around this plan, starting on the right side there with the main entry. Coming through the main vestibule, we've got our ticketing office and office space there in the green right below that, as well as a retail space right above it. Some nice big public restrooms right there as you enter. Up on the top portion that you see in orange and purple are the locker rooms in orange and our kitchen space in purple there. And then on the upper left, we've got a north lobby. So this building's a little bit unique in that it has really two lobby spaces. The main lobby coming off of the public access on the right side of your screen. And then that north lobby will really be where people coming from the Super Barn and the fair, competitors and things like that will come into that lobby there. Just below that, we have our big, large back-of-house area and staging area that leads right onto our arena floor. One of the things that really makes this facility unique is that access from the barn straight into this arena floor for those horse shows and livestock events. So that big back-of-house space will be set up with pinning and all kinds of rodeo setups and things like that that will lead right onto that nice big arena floor. The way that it typically functions for a horse show or livestock show is they'll go from there to the arena floor and then back around on that back of house south that you see on the right side through the return alley and back out. So that nice big return alley along with those back of house areas and the size of that arena floor are some of the things that make this a really unique venue and one of a kind in the country and why these horse shows and other events love coming here so much. Along the bottom of your screen, you'll see a lot of kind of more of the utilitarian functions there with our mechanical spaces, our loading docks, some crew spaces as well, and that leads us back around to that back of house south area. Up on the concourse level, we've got our mainstay there on the right. Nice big open concourse space around there for vendors and exhibitors to display their booths in that area. And then as you walk around the concourse, it's really a pretty tight, efficient plan. It's mostly comprised of that concourse space, which you see in the tan color there, and then the concession spaces, which we've located in the four quadrants of the building, in the purple color, and restrooms in that navy brown or navy blue color. We do have a lounge space there on your left side. So we have introduced some premium products as a new aspect to this arena that they don't currently have. We've got the lounge over there on the left side that leads into some loge seating on that side. And then on your lower right side, we've got a few suites right there as well as the production area there in green. We know this needs to host a variety of events within this facility, so it's a really flexible space. It can go from about 5,000 seats in an equine and livestock setup to up to about 8,000 seats for a basketball or concert type of setup. And then getting into the architectural form, we knew that this needed to be a really efficient and functional building, an economical building. So we started, once we had the floor plan laid out that we knew everybody was happy with and was really tight, we laid a really simple and efficient structure on top of that and started to extrude the plan up through that shape to start to give us the shape of the building and what we have to work with there. And then we can, from there, kind of delineate that shape, integrate roof wells and things like that, and start to think about materials. Of course, we want to pay attention to the State Fair campus that we're located in and think about the existing palette out there, which consists mostly of masonry on the bottom and that light metal colored panel on the top. These are the buildings that will be surrounding us. And then thinking about materials that are flexible, functional, durable, and economical, like these phenolic panels. And then just what's the inspiration for this building? What do we want it to look like? When we think about those materials, how are we going to utilize them? So we started thinking about the Native American and Western patterns that we see throughout the state, and especially out there at the fairgrounds, as well as the movement of the activities that are inside that fairgrounds arena. The basketball and equine type of facilities, thinking about that movement and how that can be conveyed into the exterior design of the building and interior design of the building. And that led us to this project that you see in front of you today. You can see that those patterns, kind of the influence of those patterns on that upper portion, those panels that make up the upper portion that really are kind of the defining feature of the project. And then that's all grounded by that masonry base on the lower portion with kind of that red dirt, Oklahoma red dirt color that we've got to it. Those panels span around the full exterior of the building on all sides. We saw an opportunity to bring those not only on those public sides, but also around to the west side and possibly integrate some graphic element with the big OKC there and the shading of the panels that could be seen from I-40 and I-44 that you'll recall where those are located on that first slide. As we come back around to the Bennett side of it, we've got our nice big plaza space that can be utilized for a variety of functions out there. The State Fair, as well as all the different shows that they have where they have trailers and other displays out there. And then as we come inside the building, you're greeted by a nice big double height entry lobby here. You can see up to the concourse level, as well as down from the concourse level into the lobby space. And then our main bowl. This is a equine setup that we've got here for one of the horse shows, for example. About 5,000 seats shown in this setup. A little bit over 50-foot clear height in there that will allow them to do any of the functions and any of the events that they want to host in this venue. And then we do have some of those premium spaces like the lounge space that you saw there on the northwest end of the building that you see here. So overall, our construction budget for this project is $84 million. Our latest estimates put us just under that number. We are carrying 5 alternates for the project. Those are all equipment and signage alternates. And with all of those, we've kind of taken the approach of parsing those out to make sure that we include any portions that are critical for the function of the arena in the base bid and only separating those alternates out that are kind of added features. For instance, in the signage package, all of the code and wayfinding signage that is required for the building is within the base bid. The alternate is the decorative signage and the graphics that would go within it in the arena. Our anticipated schedule right now is hopefully to get the preliminary report approved here today, start on final specs as soon as the new year starts. That'll take us into the summer, bidding and awarding near the end of the summertime, and construction beginning around September of 22. And it's anticipated to last about 24 months of construction. And that's what we've got for you here today. Once again, thank you all for letting us present, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
I had the chance to see the National Reining Horse competition a few weeks ago, and it was all anybody wanted to talk about. I mean, they're very excited about this project.
Yeah.
I do have a few questions. One is, I know when I got to tour the Newark Arena, it was pointed out like things like the seats, and there's just some elements from the building that I could imagine are very nostalgic for folks who have been going there their whole lives for different events. And I'm curious if there's any discussion about, in the demolition process, like saving any elements from the building for either display, or if the fairgrounds, OKC Fairgrounds has any like plans for like preservation of any of those, maybe not like every single seat, but like a handful of things.
Yeah.
Curious if
Yeah,
that's been a
great question.
discussion.
We do have in the preliminary report that all demolition work is to be coordinated with the State Fair, and we're going to salvage any materials that can be used, including electronics, scoreboards, elements like that could be used elsewhere on the fairgrounds. So we want to make sure we're really responsible with that. And that definitely could include any elements like that kind of had that historic significance.
Well, and the other piece I was thinking about is in maybe even the 1% for art process, maybe, I could see how some artists might see some of those elements and be interested in incorporating it into a proposal. So even kind of from that aspect, I think it could be a neat just preservation of some of that history and connecting the two buildings. On the slideshow, can we go, this is like a really nitpicky question, but can we go back to where the aerial, it was one of the very first slides, kind of showing, I think the forward two. One more maybe.
Big aerial, all the way out?
Well, okay, so this is good. So where the connector is supposed to take place, I saw that there was on one of the slides, and we don't have to go back, but there was like a sod area, and then it just said like surface space, like I think it said just asphalt. I'm curious if there's like a purpose for that space.
So the area in between, the long-term vision for that is that we know that a connector building is essential from that super barn to this Coliseum. Right now, that is not within the budget and scope of the project. Our hope is that occurs quickly and can coincide directly with this so that it gets done right afterwards. So that space is, we've shown it as minimal as we can at this point, knowing that could happen within the process of this project, and we don't want to design and put a bunch of nice paving in there if it's going to get ripped up or something like that. As the connector is going to happen as soon as this completes. So yeah, that's been left as a little bit of a blank slate. We didn't even went as far as making almost a whole half of it a sod pads because we didn't want to put more asphalt than we need in there. The north half of that does get utilized a lot by the fair, so they do need some hard surface there to set up for the fair if that connector is not completed in time. But yeah, that's the idea there, is that hopefully that connector comes in soon thereafter, and we didn't want to do anything that could be wasteful in that area for now.
Because I was thinking if it was like long-term supposed to stay that way, if there was a use for that asphalt, but if not, I could imagine it would be nice to have a little nice, kind of more friendly feeling connector, I guess, between them, just sort of
the
giant...
full plans, that outdoor plaza space extends all the way to the super barn on the north and continues like that same pattern and the same kind of landscape kind of element on the buffer there. And then the connector is right there in between, and how wide that is kind of the question. And the plaza would extend to the connector, and the connector would hopefully have kind of some expo elements that would open up into that plaza space and make a really nice area right there.
So do we have any cost estimates on what the permanent connector would be?
Not at this time, because we don't really know the scale. I mean,
hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars?
It would definitely be in the millions. But it really just depends on what scale, how big that gets, and what we want to have in the connector,
One of the biggest benefits that we have right now is the fact that the super barn is connected directly to the Coliseum, and as much as possible, the vision and the goal, Tim O'Toole is here in the back, but one of the vision and goal is to recreate that connection between those spaces as much as possible.
Exactly.
I have two follow-ups. one, to Councilwoman Hammond's inquiry about the historic nature. Can we be made aware and/or the public of the day when the actual demolition will occur? Because that facility, I know it might shock everybody to hear the film nerd care about rodeo and these sorts of things, but I do.
Certainly.
And I'd love to be able to be there if safety allows for that day, because yeah, I think that would really mean a lot to me. And I don't know if even to residents. I think of residents when they showed up when the Biltmore came down all those years ago and how much it meant to them just to be in attendance. So I hope that doesn't sound morbid. For me, I'm very excited about what's coming, very excited about it. That's my
Well, and
question.
you'll have the new facility there at the time that we're ready to make that decision and ready at the timing of when that will happen. And so that's definitely something that we can make sure we communicate.
And I don't know if it'll be as dramatic as you might be envisioning.
Yeah. It'll come
Maybe
down
3
chunks
weeks
at a
of,
time.
yeah, maybe
Yes.
3 weeks of wrecking balls. It may not be sounds like you're envisioning a moment, but.
Well, actually, I think it might be as exciting as we think, because I had the conversation with Mr. O'Toole and Mayor Norick yesterday. They answered some of my questions from our MAPS 3 advisory meeting from last week. And the way they made it sound, you want to see it. Yeah, it's going to be imploded. So it sounds like it's
Of course,
going to
the
be.
fair always wants it to be a show, right?
You want it to. And to the
Sell
point,
tickets.
yes, and to the point of Councilperson Cooper, I asked if I could be there too. So it's not uncommon. I think everybody actually wants to see this happen.
Ask and ye shall. My second question is more, you like that one? Thank you. Stick around, I got a lot more dad jokes to come. My second one, I went back and looked at the MAPS 4 resolution. I'm just curious about the sustainable design aspect of this, just thinking about what's going into this that's taking into consideration sustainability.
Yeah, so with this project, we're trying to use all of our best practices when it comes to sustainability with this, from the architectural design to the mechanical design, and even the site design. Even though we're at the fair and we're on a big, huge parking lot area, we are actually increasing the pervious surface and adding in some green spaces. When it comes to the architectural design, we're going above and beyond what the current city, current city code requires us to do when it comes to the building envelope. When it comes to things like, you don't want to get into the technicals probably, but continuous insulation on the exteriors to improve the quality of the building envelope beyond what's required. The light colored TPO type of roof that reflects the sun and the heat gain, as well as the light colored exterior of the building that we've now found out. I went to Greenville just a few weeks ago, that the color of our walls has almost as big an impact as the roof, so those light colors will really help. All of our glazing is on not our harshest sides. We've got really very minimal glazing, but on the south and west sides, we don't have any glazing, so it'll just be our continuous, fully insulated continuous insulation walls around there. And then things like our fixtures and facilities within the Coliseum, using low flow fixtures and things like that, and the most efficient mechanical systems that we can afford in this building. We are doing all of our best practices when it comes to that. This isn't required to be a LEED building by the city, but we are, as part of our responsibility as architects of this building, we're taking that in as a priority in our design.
Good for you, and thank you. What is the process with these MAPS 4 projects when it comes to the sustainability portion? Do they work with our Office of Sustainability to talk about that? I don't
David,
know.
you want to address that?
Yeah, this is the first one that, obviously that we've got going, but we will work with T.O. and all those guys and have them included. And I think all the architects now are very keyed in on doing that anyway, so we're kind of ahead of the game anyway.
Yeah, it sounds like you are, and I do appreciate that, and thank you, David, as well.
Yeah, it's something we care about, and it's something that's important.
I'll say this is my third time seeing this presentation, and I see something new every time. So this time I'm not nitpicking. I'm actually saying it's pretty cool to see a family restroom and taking into account our fathers who have to take care of the young ladies, and just seeing some of those outcries from men wanting more of a family-type environment restroom for them to be able to take their daughters or even their sons, and this mother's room as well. So being very intentional. So I think I want to say thank you for those things that I get to see and say we are looking at how this can, and to the point of sustainability, actually be better. I know one of the questions that I did raise as far as the capacity, because it was built in 1965 and it was built for 8,000. Are we going to go big or go home with this new one? But I understand that the key is to just replace what we needed to and keep it the same size. So I know I'm also excited to see more events that we're going to have, especially our basketball tournaments for our young people, where they feel valued, as far as this type of space that's coming to them, because I've been in graduations, because I've been for both of those events. And to now see it in a different way, I know all of our community and our city and really our state is going to be excited when they come and view it. So third time's a charm. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. I did want to acknowledge Tim, also Tim's executive director at the Fair Board, and I really appreciate Tim's working towards his retirement if they're going to let him go. It's undecided whether they'll let him go or not, but I don't know if we'll have the opportunity, but I really do appreciate the vision and the leadership and the partnership that is part of bringing this to us. So just want to acknowledge him.
For sure. Thank you, Tim. Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you. And that concludes all the items on the consent docket that had been pulled out for any number of reasons. So we can now pass the whole docket, save the one previously passed, if the council so desires. And you might have your screen on presentation like I did. Okay. Motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. All right, now on to item 10, the concurrence docket. We have items A through H we could take with one motion. Got a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item 11 is items requiring separate votes. Item 11A is an ordinance on final hearing that was recommended for approval at 9989 Southwest 44th Street, going from AA to R1. Councilwoman Young, and on this item, Joy Reardon's going to come up and speak, or not? No, okay. Same thing. Noted for the record. Thank you, Joy. Okay, so no one has signed up to speak.
Okay. Well, seeing no protests at planning, we'll move to approval.
Got a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item 11B, ordinance on final hearing recommended for approval at 8400 South Peebly Road, going from AA to CHC. Don't see that one often. Councilman Stone, no one has signed up to speak.
Thank you, Mayor. This is for a small truck stop / gas station at I-40 and Peebly Road, located on a little over 3 acres. Recommended unanimously by the Planning Commission. If no one has any questions, I'll move for its approval.
We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes.
2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, we really are down to 5. Don't anyone else go to the bathroom, all right? Okay. Passes unanimously. All right. Item 11C, ordinance on final hearing recommended for approval at 3516 Gould Avenue from R1 to R2. Councilwoman Nice, no one has signed up to speak.
Thank you. This is to permit development of a duplex, and it seems as if it would be compatible with the R1 that is currently around it. So I will move for the approval.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Ordinance, item D, ordinance on final hearing, 11000 Northeastern Avenue, going from R1 to PUD 1790. Councilwoman Nice, no one is signed up to speak.
Okay, thank you. This is to permit a RV and boat storage complex, and this has actually been in the works for quite some time to get us where we need it to be right now. And as you can see, there are a number of TEs for this, and we did have some protests. And Mr. Box, come on up, please. And if you don't mind, the only thing I want you to do is to address what the concerns were, where we are, and how we can move it forward.
Sure. David Box, 522 Colcord Drive. As Councilwoman indicated, this is a project that took quite some time, lots of neighborhood meetings. It ultimately culminated with a series of changes to the PUD. One of the concerns was how the site would interact with the abutting property. You can see in the site plan before you, what we ended up settling on was a fairly significant landscape buffer along the north, along the east, and also along the west. We also limited height of any new buildings that would be built. We also made some changes to facade regulations, required everything to be indoors, and curtailed hours of operation. Ultimately, that led to the additional 10 technical evaluations that were added at the Planning Commission stage, and it was met with unanimous approval by Planning Commission.
Well, I'll say, which I say rarely, job well done to work with the neighbors. Mr. Box, I appreciate that.
Thank you. Well, I do always work with the neighbors.
Well, I didn't say you didn't, but I know it's difficult, and a lot of times we can't get where we all can be satisfied, is what I'm saying. So I appreciate you doing that and us for being able to move this forward. So with that, I will move for approval.
Got a motion and a second. Cast your votes.
Thank you.
Passes unanimously. Thank you. Item 11E is an ordinance on final hearing that was recommended for approval at, that's funny, same number address as the last one, 11100 Southwest 15th Street from AA to PUD 1850. Councilwoman Young, no one has signed up to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With the recommendation of planning and no protest, I'll move for approval.
Got a motion and a second. Here it comes. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. All right, F and G are related. F is a resolution receiving an amendment to the comprehensive plan, removing the urban future land use typology area layer from the urban low intensity base LUDA designation on a 160-acre tract located at the northwest corner of Northwest 150th and North Sarah Road. And then I'll just go ahead and state item G as well. This is to amend the technical evaluation from 100-year storm to 100-year floodplain. And there's also an ordinance vote, so lots of work here, but they're all related. And Councilman Carter, no one has signed up to speak.
David, would you give us a little explanation on it, please?
Yes, once again, David Box, 522 Colcord Drive. Also with me is Mark Zitzel from Johnson Associates and Zach Roach with Ideal Homes. So this is an application in an area that is what seems to be now kind of quickly developing area. We have access to water, we have access to sewer. One of the things that was an initial hurdle for us was the comprehensive plan was designated, and that's what this item is, designated as urban future. So, the only process that really exists is for an applicant to come forward, file the application to have that urban future layer removed. So we did so. Staff, after their analysis, did recommend approval of that layer to be removed. Planning Commission agreed, removed the layer. Then the next item is the PUD. The PUD allowed for the development of a single-family home neighborhood. There was an individual at the Planning Commission that was there in the neighborhood to the west. It's a bit of a unique protest in that although their acreages and our development is smaller in terms of scale of the home size and the lot size, they were fully supportive of the development provided we don't connect to the west. We are committed to no connection to the west, happy to amend the PUD if necessary. So with our agreement to not connect to the west, the one individual that showed up was supportive of the development and reported to the Planning Commission that all of his neighbors were likewise supportive of the development. It's also worth noting it is just south of a development that was approved by council, and a plat has recently been approved for a single-family neighborhood to the north, and there's another quarter section that's coming to you in about a month just to the east at 150th and Morgan Road. So it's an area that is quickly developing, infrastructure is in place, and Planning Commission has been supportive of the developments.
Thank you. I've been in contact with a number of the neighbors, and the one that I believe you spoke with is kind of self-appointed spokesperson. Sure. Every one of them now are very happy with the way you handled that. They're in agreement with this, and they actually withdraw their protest of this side of it. So with that.
I do have a quick question about the site you referenced on the north end that's R1 that was recently rezoned. Was that the case in which staff recommended denial? This might be a question for Jeff.
It was.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was in March. It was the 80 acres that is terraced immediately to what would be kind of the northwest corner of this site.
So for Jeff, I'm curious, and you might not have an exact answer because it's probably a lot of different factors, but if that site had not been approved by council, do you think that this would have been recommended for approval by staff?
Good question. It's hard to speculate. I think the reason the one to the north was further out of the one to the north was farther away from emergency services, so that was kind of the reason for the staff approval. The one that is in question right now is similar to the one you saw earlier, where it has better emergency services. It's just far enough to the south, and it does also have water and sewer right there. It is, right on the. It's kind of a gray area. We have to make a call one way or the other, but it is near the border of the city. It is close enough to services where we felt like we felt comfortable recommending approval, as did the Planning Commission. The one that David referenced to the north adjacent, fire would have to go another 1.5 miles and then into the development to get there. So it actually makes quite a difference.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Carter, as I mentioned to Councilwoman Nice in a similar instance at a council meeting, when it comes to the comp plan amendments, I just wanted you to know it's very difficult for me to support those amendments, so I won't be supporting this. It has nothing to do about your judgment or anything like that. It's just it's where I'm at with these amendments right now, so to the comp plan. So just wanted to, in the spirit of transparency and communication.
Council, may I address that real quick? And I certainly appreciate your position. I think one of the things that gets left out is the comp plan is only on to receive. There is no action that this council could take to amend or not amend the comprehensive plan. It is 100% within the purview of the Planning Commission to amend the comprehensive plan.
Thank you for your context. And I've heard this context as well. You and I have discussed it. Such is the case, at the same time, here it is in front of us at council. I understand your frustration. I saw the look. I know. I also have no poker face. We're very similar in this way. So I hear what you're saying. You like that one too? I told you more dad jokes are coming, y'all. It is an item before this council. And since it is an item before this council, and I didn't ask for it to be an item before this council.
Oh, I
by the
understand.
way. Like, this was not my process, right? So now that these have come before council, I feel like it is incumbent upon me to add my voice to it. If it weren't here, I wouldn't. I would trust the process of the planning department, and that'd be the end. But it's not. And I have no debate over it. I can't, there's nothing I can do to change it. It just is in front of us, and I am someone who cares passionately about the stewardship of the city's resources, all of them. And I don't want to see us put more strain on them, and I believe that the comp plan was an attempt to mitigate the precise concerns I just addressed. So.
And I appreciate that.
So it's my understanding they didn't have to send it to us. They do that just to kind of, it's an honor thing to let us know what's going on. We could all vote no, and it would still go through.
It would still.
Correct?
Yeah, correct. In fact, I have no idea why these come before you now, because they haven't always come before you. Some of them don't come before you.
Okay, I appreciate that they come before us. I recognize we could all vote no on it, and it doesn't matter. What I hear from staff sometimes is that planning commission sometimes feels a little hamstrung in how their sort of ability to say no to something. So I appreciate it, and I think this helps us have a voice in the process to at least express something, and maybe even at some point help empower our planning commission to feel more like they can rely on judgment of that maybe takes a step beyond, or could probably be backed up by the current comprehensive plan policies to say, no, we don't want to accept this. So just my 2 cents.
And I agree 100%. I wasn't trying to come against you on that side of it. I appreciate the fact that they want to give us that respect and let us see what they've decided and where they're going with it. After talking with the residents as well as the builders in this situation is the reason that I have decided to go ahead and support it and move for approval. So with that, I move for approval.
Okay, so to clarify, that is approval of item F, the resolution receiving an amendment to the comprehensive plan?
Correct.
Got it. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes 6-2. And then we have item G1, amending the technical evaluation from 100-year storm to 100-year floodplain. You wish to move that?
I do.
We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes 7-1. And then finally, we have item G2, ordinance on final hearing recommended for approval, 15101 North Sarah Road, going from AA to PUD 1851. You wish to move that, Councilman Carter?
Yes, please.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes 6-2.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, item 11H, ordinance on final hearing recommended for approval at 5300 South Richland Road, going from AA to PUD 1852. Councilwoman Young, no one has signed up to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Seeing no protests and with the recommendation to planning for the ordinance to be adopted and the easement to be accepted, I move for approval.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item 11I is ordinance on final hearing that was recommended for approval at 4000 East Hefner Road, going from PUD 1586 to PUD 1854. Councilwoman Nice, the applicant from Quick Trip, is here for questions if necessary.
All right. I don't think anyone has any questions. Does anyone have any questions? All right. As you are aware, it went viral as soon as we heard it was coming. So this solidifies that it is coming, and it is a Quick Trip. right by Frontier City. So I don't know about y'all, but I'm excited about it. So I'm going to ask that we approve this, and I also had a conversation with the folks from Quick Trip, and they assured me that they plan on being good neighbors in Oklahoma City for their first store in Oklahoma City, outside of Tulsa area.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item J is an ordinance on final hearing that was recommended for approval at 2528 North Chartel Avenue and 722 Northwest 25th, going from neighborhood conservation and historic landmark overlay to SPUD 1336. Councilman Cooper, no one has signed up to speak.
Thank you. And yet, I believe representation for the applicant is here. Hi, Mark.
Good morning, Mark Zitzow with Johnson & Associates, 1 East Sheridan Avenue.
How are you holding up?
I'm doing well, how are you?
Always good hanging out with you.
Great.
So first, I was wondering if you might be able to walk us through the particulars of this project, and then I'll have probably a couple follow-ups.
Absolutely. This is a project that we started, I believe, back in May with an introduction to the Historic Preservation Commission prior to filing an application. It was at that time that Commissioner Milner suggested we reach out to the neighborhood, where we've since hosted multiple meetings with the Paseo neighborhood, Jefferson Park neighborhood, associations. We've also gone back and forth through emails over the last several months. I think initially we started out with concerns and maybe misinformation that got out there about the project. What the project is, there's a historic church that's noted in that tan color on the tract on the left. Our client's seeking to preserve the existing church and turn it into possibly a duplex. A new building would be immediately south, which is a 15-unit stacked flat building. And then to the east on the 50-foot wide lot, there's a proposed fourplex. Initially, we came in with an application that allowed the density up to 29 units and a lower parking ratio. This is just going to be a few blocks away from the bus rapid transit along Classen. It's also only 2 blocks north of 23rd Street, which in the comprehensive plan is noted for higher density and mixed-use development. So through the negotiations with the neighbors, we ultimately brought the unit count down on the total project and increased the parking. With that, the residents appeared to support the project and withdrew protests. I don't know that we actually ever formally received a protest, but I don't see any of the neighbors that we worked with here today, and they did not show up at Planning Commission either, and they were provided those dates. So pending approval of this project, the developer has committed to, in all of the public hearings, at the time that he comes in with an application for the 15-unit stacked flat building, that he would come in with a certificate of appropriateness to the Historic Preservation Commission to shore up the existing church. So what that looks like is roof repair, window sealant, facade repair. If you've been by there, there's actually a stack of bricks, probably about as tall as I am, that have fallen off the church over the last 20 to 25 years. So those applications will be submitted together.
Thank you. Jeff might be the appropriate person to ask this question. Would you mind, rather than residents hearing it from my mouth, what a good working definition of workforce affordable housing is?
Okay, yeah, good question. Jeff Butler, Planning Director. So a couple different terms. Workforce housing is typically something that would be from 80% of the area median income to 100 or a little bit above that, 100%. Affordable housing we typically refer to as being from 60% of AMI, area median income, to 80%, or sometimes lower, often lower than 60% could be affordable as well. But that's kind of our working definition, and sometimes terms are used somewhat interchangeably, but when we refer to those, that's how we do it.
And we set aside money and residents approved in 2017,
Yes.
funding for the workforce affordable housing, right?
Yes, 10 million from the general obligation limited tax funds.
And then to break this language down further, what kind of incomes are we talking about when we're talking about workforce affordable? Like, I mean, I know you said the percentage, but what are we talking about?
Oh, the actual incomes, the salaries, we're looking less than 60,000, anywhere from 30s to people in the income ranges of 20s, 30s, 40s.
Just want to make that very clear to folk, because part of the misconception that Mark is talking about is that sometimes when people hear these words, they think, and I don't think there's anything wrong with public housing. In fact, I'd love to see more of it. But they misunderstand the two, right? And so what I have requested with this particular project is for them to take into consideration the utilization of our workforce affordable housing funds that we have to see if it might work for this project. Because when I think of a workforce, I think of Paseo, I think of Uptown, and I think of the Asian District. And I think of those incomes, 20,000, 30,000, 40,000, 50,000, 60,000. We're talking about teachers. We're talking about baristas, we're talking about servers, we're talking about literally the workforce of this city, the working middle class, because we know that our middle class in Oklahoma is about 30,000 on the low end to about 80,000 on the high end. And so, and if you didn't know, now you know. So for me to be able to help those folk be able to afford to live close to where they work is central. And I'll go further. It is a central priority for those of us who live in Ward 2. We are a more densely populated part of the city, and so many of us have chosen to live where we live in Ward 2 because of its proximity to where we work. So I think that's a very important thing to note here. So we've already, and I very much appreciate you all coming to the table to see if we can make some of these units that. I mean, even if it's just a handful of these units that, because the current marketplace, terrifyingly enough, is pushing us toward rents for one bedrooms that are close to $1,000 a month. And if you're making $30,000 and you're working middle class, if your starting pay as a teacher is $31,000, can you afford a $900 a month rent? So that's my question, right? And so I love when we have the kind of projects that allow for a mixture of mixed income, right? Workforce affordable and then market rate. So that's what I'm hoping is possible here. And so I know we've talked, like I said, to see what's possible, but we hadn't heard any updates. And so I'm wondering, and I think staff's already reached out to you, is it possible to defer this for a couple weeks to see where we can get there? The only other thing I will add here is I understand that this one's a bit of a special project for all of us if one thinks about it, right? Because not only is it going to address the infill that you're talking about that we need, but the preservation of this church. The preservation of this church is very important to Paseo residents and clearly to you and your clients. So, and I don't want to get in the way of the progress that's going to be necessary to get this project underway. So how can we work together here?
Right, so for the rest of the council, some of the background that Councilman Cooper just addressed, I'd say about a month ago we met with the Alliance and city staff, and it was determined that it's possible that some of the dollars that have been allocated for affordable housing can be used on a project of this size. We've met and our client has gone back and forth trying to answer some questions or get questions answered from city staff in regards to what does the pro forma need to look like. Ultimately, that information cannot be provided back to staff, not partially because we don't have approval here. He can't move forward with architectural design and bidding to have solid numbers to be presented back to staff to determine what type of grant may be provided and what that would do to the rent. So it's a little bit of a chicken and egg. I've talked to our client. He's willing to take the 2-week continuance that was requested to meet again to discuss it. But ultimately, until he has entitlements in place, he can't move forward with architectural design to get more solid numbers. So I don't know that a 2-week continuance ultimately would give you the kind of the solid answers that you were after. But if another meeting is needed, we are happy to do so.
The other thing you probably can't move forward with is lending at this stage.
That's correct.
Okay. Then I'm going to go ahead and let's go ahead and move forward on this, because if that can get us to the place where we can actually move forward on seeing if this is a possibility, then okay, then that's okay. But I still would like to meet with you all within the. We have the holidays, so maybe let's just say right after the new year, and let's kind of just touch base and see where we are. And I appreciate you all taking this seriously, and I hope we're able to do something here. And I just want to make sure the record states that this is all of us trying to do the right thing here to make sure that our workforce, and by the way, this is thinking outside the box. There has not been a moment inward to where we've got to talk about utilizing these sorts of funds to do these sort of smaller developments. So this is really us thinking outside the box, both as a council member, planning staff, Economic Alliance, and the applicant, the developer here. And I think we need to see more of this sort of stuff, particularly along the BRT route. So I really appreciate your patience and your working with us on that, Mark. And with that, I don't know, does council have any other questions with that? All right, I'd move for approval.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on item J. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Item K was previously struck, which brings us to item L, which is an ordinance on final hearing that was recommended for approval. This is a special permit to allow an automotive dealership in I-2 Moderate Industrial District and C3 Community Commercial Zoning District at 7400 South. Okay. Councilman Stone, no one has signed up to speak.
Thank you, Mayor. As you stated, this is for an automotive dealership at 74th and Santa Fe, recommended by the Planning Commission, so I would move for its approval.
We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Now we have a public hearing regarding an ordinance change, a proposed ordinance change relating to motor vehicle and traffic. This pertains to the streetcar. This was presented on at the last council meeting. Today is merely the public hearing. Amy, has anyone signed up to speak?
No, they haven't.
Then we will close that public hearing and move on to item N, which is also a public hearing, also relating to an ordinance relating to the general schedule of fees, specifically related, though, to the same proposal regarding streetcar. Amy, has anyone signed up to speak?
No, they haven't.
Then we will close this public hearing and move on to item O, which is O1 is the public hearing regarding the dilapidated structures here listed. You have nothing to strike here, right?
I don't have anything on this one.
Okay, we're going to talk about that in a minute. But all right, item O1 is a public hearing regarding dilapidated structures here listed. Have any signed up to speak?
No,
We have not seen any requests, and so we will go to O2, which is the resolution declaring that the structures are dilapidated. There's a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Mark, have you voted? There we go. Passes unanimously. All right, now 11P and 11Q, on unsecured and abandoned, we have had some late arriving strikes. And so we have missed our window to do that the normal way where we just handle it as an uncontested continuance. So what we're going to do is Craig is going to list the items to strike on unsecured, and then we're going to take a motion to strike those items before we proceed to consideration of the other items. So this is just unsecured, Mr. City Manager.
Right, this is under 11P1, and the following items are all requested to be stricken from the agenda. Item E, 3412 South Liberty Avenue, The owner is secured. Item N, 4204 Northwest 23rd Street. The owner is secured. Item P, 605 Southwest 45th Street. The owner is secured. Item T, 1149 Northwest 56th Street. The owner is secured. Item W, 232 Northwest 84th Street. The owner is secured. Item X, 717 Northwest 86th Street. The owner is secured. And item Y, 1204 Northwest 98th Street. The owner is secured. And that's all the items on unsecured.
To strike. Okay, so is there a motion? Can we take a motion now to strike those items from the agenda? Got a motion and a second. Cast your votes.
I know. It's okay.
Passes unanimously. We're now back on item 11P1, the items that are remaining. Amy, has anyone signed up to speak? No, they have not. And so,
Mayor.
yes.
I'd like to defer for 2 weeks.
Okay. So we'll take a motion then to bring that up to defer item L, 11P1L. Defer that for 2 weeks. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. We've closed the public hearing on item 11P1, which brings us to 11P2, which is the resolution declaring that the structures are unsecured except for the ones previously struck or deferred. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. All right, we'll do the similar dance on 11Q1. If you wouldn't mind, Mr. City Manager, listing the items you'd wish to strike.
All of these items are stricken from the agenda that I'll list, and all of them are because the owner is secured, so I'll just give the address. Item F, 4204 Northwest 23rd Street. Item H, 605 Southwest 45th Street. Item K, 1149 Northwest 56th Street. Item N, 232 Northwest 84th Street. Item O, 717 Northwest 86th Street. And item P, 1204 Northwest 98th Street.
All right, so now let's take a motion to strike those items from Q1. Got a motion and a second? Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Are there any other items anybody needs to defer? Okay. Has anyone signed up to speak, Amy?
No, they haven't.
They have not, so we'll close the public hearing, which brings us to Q1-2, the resolution declaring that the buildings are abandoned, save for those struck previously. We'll take a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. All right, item R1 and R2 are related. R1 is a public hearing regarding a resolution authorizing acceptance of the joint award for the 2021 Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant in the amount of $496,000, $496,593. Has anyone signed up to speak, Amy?
No, they haven't.
They have not, and I understand we already had a presentation on this.
We did. We had a presentation on the 9th of November, and this particular grant requires a 30-day time period between the notice and the public hearing.
Okay, so we'll close the public hearing, and then that brings us to R2, which is the resolution authorizing acceptance of the joint award for the 2021 Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant. Are there any comments or questions? If not, we can proceed with consideration. All right, we've got a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. All right, 11S was previously deferred at the beginning of the meeting, which brings us to 11T, a resolution granting a special limited exemption to the Medicare requirement provisions of the group indemnity healthcare plan for the police and fire retirees and their eligible spouses, et cetera. And I believe we have a presentation.
Yes, Christian York, our benefits manager and assistant personnel director, is going to give us a quick presentation on this issue.
Thank you, City Manager. So this item is an exemption to one of our health insurance requirements for a couple dozen public safety employees that were hired before 1987. Specifically, the requirement that the retiree participate in Medicare Part A. A little bit of context, most of us will qualify for free Medicare Part A in our lifetime by working 40 quarters and paying those FICA taxes for Medicare and Social Security. And that brings us to the issue specifically for these folks. Officers and firefighters hired before 1987 did not have those payroll taxes taken out of their paychecks. That was appropriate at the time because they participate in state pension systems and aren't generally eligible for Social Security, and the city was providing their health insurance. But in 1986, the IRS gave us new guidelines, and so from 1987 forward, we started taking out those payroll taxes on their behalf. These individuals we're addressing today were hired prior to 1987, have done a career with the city, but have never had those FICA taxes taken out of their payroll, so they do not qualify for free Medicare Part A. This exemption would allow them to continue to participate in retiree health insurance, even though they don't have Part A. The way that would work practically is that if there was a hospitalization claim, which would be covered from Medicare Part A, that would be paid just like we normally would through for an active city employee who did not have Medicare. In other words, the city would pick up the tab through the city health insurance. Given that these individuals really had nothing to do with the IRS guidelines or the transition or the way it occurred, staff recommends that we approve the exemption for these couple of dozen officers and firefighters. That was very high level summary. There's 30 years of history there, but if you have any specific questions, I'll be happy to try to answer them.
Any comments or questions? If not, what would the council wish to do with the resolution? Got a motion and a second? Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item U is a resolution receiving the Innovation District Land Use Plan as an amendment to the comprehensive plan, and I believe we have a presentation.
Yes, good morning. Lisa Chronister, Assistant Planning Director. Here to tell you about the Innovation District Land Use Plan. Okay, so what is the Innovation District Land Use Plan? It was adopted by the Planning Commission at their November 18th meeting as an amendment to the comprehensive plan. This amendment added the policies and guidelines contained within the land use plan to the list of items that would guide public and private investment and projects in the area. Specifically, the plan provides specific information to guide new development. It will be used by the city to prioritize capital improvement projects such as bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. It will be used to guide TIF projects, tax increment financing projects. And it will be used to inform our development codes update project, which we had a council briefing earlier this morning. And so to inform that we're in progress, specifically regarding a potential new design district in the area. The plan was funded jointly by the city, the Alliance for Economic Development, the Innovation District, and several other entities like the Chamber of Commerce. And the intent of the plan was to show how the area could develop as a dense, active, safe, mixed-use environment. The plan consultant performed a variety of community outreach activities during the development of the plan in 2018, and then in the last year, planning staff provided additional community outreach in the form of virtual meetings with the neighborhoods and in-person events, information booths at several community festivals and events. So what does the land use plan do? The land use plan provides a guide for future development in the area. It identifies 6 different categories of development typologies, ranging from quiet neighborhoods to more active, high-intensity impact uses. And each of these development categories, the plan provides for guidelines addressing density, form, height, block sizes, lot widths, sidewalks, and parking. Overall, the intent of the plan is to buffer quieter neighborhoods, as shown here mostly in the yellow areas, buffer the neighborhoods from the more active, intense, noisier uses, including I-235 on the west, the hospital core, and the research facilities. Key features of the plan include guidelines for density, block sizes, widths, setbacks, things like that. Guidelines for livable streets, so the street design that will accommodate users of all types, regardless of how you get around, whether that's walking, biking, mass transit. Then it also outlines a network of these livable streets. And the network is critical because the network is what connects residents to services, connects employers to employees, and makes all of the different typologies work together. The plan also contains guidelines for preserving and rehabilitating existing historic structures in the area. So while the land use plan encompasses the area of the state capitol and the research park and the adjacent neighborhoods, only a portion of the plan area is within Oklahoma City zoning. So the area shown in the light gray above, that is under the purview of the Capital Medical Center Improvement and Zoning District, and that's the entity that makes zoning decisions in that area. But for City of Oklahoma City, we'll do the portions shown in the different colors of development typologies. So I want to be sure everyone understands what the land use plan will not do. It's not changing anyone's zoning. It's not going to require any property owners to upgrade or update their properties in any way. It will be used to evaluate future rezoning proposals. And nothing about the plan changes the process for rezoning. There will still be multiple public hearings. There will still be mailed public notices to surrounding property owners. So since the consultant prepared the plan, planning department staff worked to update some of the language to coordinate with plans that had subsequently been developed, such as Preserve OKC, the Historic Preservation Plan, such as Bike Walk OKC. We also updated some of the language to make sure we're being inclusive about housing types and transportation choices. And then, as I mentioned before, we did additional public engagement, mainly throughout this past summer. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
I just have a couple of questions.
There it is. I just have a couple questions as we look at even that last slide. One of the, I guess my asks is us looking at the Adapt OKC portion of this particular plan as well, and how we can further enhance the sustainability aspect of this area. And another is, I know as we've been going through this conversation with the community and the neighbors, is the conversation of some type of review board or committee. Yeah. So I would like to, I didn't actually see that in this plan, and maybe I just overread it, so I just wanted to be specific to make sure that I didn't miss it. And if not, I want it to be included in this plan. But I do want to point out that I am pleased to see the specifics of the cultural trail and some of those conversations that have been added to this conversation, as well as everything that we see as far as the preservation of existing assets, as in particular from that Preserve OKC that you spoke about, and honoring those places that our neighbors in this area have said are of the utmost importance. So I do appreciate us capturing and making sure those were noted by name.
Okay, yes, if you're looking at your plan on page 11 is where it specifies that the plan should include the establishment of a new design district for the area. It's, yeah, page 11, kind of under the heading that says specifically this plan can guide the following.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that
Yes.
was, that
Yeah,
was
it's real
public.
subtle. It's hard to.
Yes,
it's hard
because I thought I read that, but I didn't see the specific in that. So I appreciate that. And I wanted to make sure that is public, that that is something that we want to move forward with in order for us to have the Preserve OKC, Bike Walk OKC, and Adapt OKC, those different pieces that we want to have those protections of, especially pertaining to the little area that we read on page 9 with the neighborhood context. So we want to ensure that we are still protecting our neighborhood in the process of us developing the neighborhood. So thank you very much.
Okay. No other questions? We could consider the resolution. Got a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Are we waiting on anybody? Sorry, Councilman Cooper? How would you like to vote? And Councilman Carter? They are both, 1 and 2 would both like to be recorded as yes. Passes unanimously. Okay, now we are at item V. V1 is the second extension of collective bargaining agreement with the Fraternal Order of Police. I understand we do have, there's the option here for executive session. Staff has not requested it, but I understand that we do potentially have a council member who wishes to go to executive session on this.
As briefly as we need to learn what we need to, and then I'd be ready for this.
There's a couple things I could probably comment on real quickly and just see if that resolves. But
Okay.
basically, this is just an extension. Previously, we had extended all of our contracts to the end of the calendar year to allow us time to do negotiations. In our last executive session, we had brought forward an offer to the FOP. They have tentatively agreed to it and just need time to vote it with their members. It won't be voted prior to the end of this calendar year. They won't be able to get that completed. And so we just needed to add an extension so we could work forward and just give us some more room on that. It doesn't change anything else on the agreement, but just allows us to move forward with our process that we had discussed previously. And if you want to go into executive session.
Say yes or
discuss
no.
further,
I mean, we you know, you would like to go into executive
Okay,
session?
then I'm with Councilwoman Young.
Okay.
Okay, so we do want to go into executive session on that. All right, so then let's take a vote to do that. We'll handle it at the end of our other business, but, so this is a motion on item V2. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Okay, so we will handle that at the end of our other business and have a potential vote on item V1 following that executive session. Item W1 is a joint resolution with the Oklahoma City Municipal Facilities Authority authorizing the general manager and the trust's legal counsel to enter into settlement of the action styled Carpenter and Carpenter v. City of OKC. I'm told, do we also have a request? No, we do not. Okay. If there's no request for an executive session, we could forego W2 and simply approve the joint resolution at W1. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. All right, X1 is a resolution approving the request for salary continuation for Corporal Nick Filippo while he continues to require rehabilitation. Executive session is not requested. Got a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Okay, item Y1 is a resolution authorizing the municipal council to confess judgment without admitting liability in the case of Faulkner v. City of OKC. Executive session is not requested. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item Z1 is a resolution authorizing the municipal council to confess judgment without admitting liability in the case of Garcia v. City of OKC. Executive session is not requested. We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Okay, item AA1 is a resolution authorizing the municipal council to commence an action in the Oklahoma County District Court seeking a declaration of the rights between the City of OKC and the Fraternal Order of Police pursuant to the Fire and Police Arbitration Act regarding arbitrator Peter Clark's award in FMCS number, et cetera. I'm told there is a request by a council member to have an executive session. Okay, all right, well then we'll forgo AA1 for the moment and vote on AA2 to enter into executive session. Got a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously, so we will handle that at the conclusion of our other business, at which time we would return and also potentially have a vote on AA1. Okay, item AB was struck, right, at the beginning?
That's correct.
And that brings us to AC, which is claims recommended for approval. Executive session is not requested. We have items A through E we could take with one motion. Got a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Okay, now we're at item 12, comments from council. Ward 1.
I just went blank.
What happened? Did I call it?
No, it just didn't display.
Did I say anything? I don't even know. I get in such a rhythm, right? Did I say passes
Yes.
unanimously?
Yes.
Okay, good. Sometimes I don't even know what I've said up here. Okay, we're at
My
Ward 1.
turn. Okay. I just wanted to say Merry Christmas to everybody and say thank you for all of our citizens and just different departments that have reached out to us and thanked us for what we do. I want to thank them for what they do. I mean, we have an amazing city and a great city staff that keeps everything running. And I also want to just kind of make and bring awareness to the fact that this is also a very hard time for a lot of people in our city who are struggling with addictions and recoveries. If someone gets put on your heart, just reach out to them. Just let them know that you care, that you're thinking of them, what's going on. I lost a cousin this week to overdose. And it's one of those things that this time of the year can be very depressing for them. So it just an awareness to remember the people that sometimes we tend to either not want to even and can forget. So, but with that, I also want you to have a joyous time and a Merry Christmas with your families. So thank you.
Thank you. Ward 2?
Yes, I'd like to thank Metro Tech for their recent invite to tour the Metro Tech at Spring Lake. I went with Representative Mike Shelton, and he took me on a tour of this facility. And as we were going around their campus, he told me that a young woman named Kaya Fletcher wanted me to drop by the culinary arts part of the campus. Now, of course, I was excited to see her because she's one of the co-owners of Kindred Spirits, which is, for my money, one of the best things the city has to offer these days. And then we have a lot of good things to offer. I'm just telling you, Kindred Spirits is up there. I was happy to do that. And then I walked in this kitchen where the students were making tamales, salsas by scratch. And I looked up and I saw this young man named Enrique. Enrique's one of my former college middle school prep students at Jefferson Middle School here in OKCPS. Quiet, just did his work, but he was 7th and 8th grader in my class. And we had gone on a field trip to Metro Tech. And I'm sure any of you who are parents can relate to what I'm about to say, but as a teacher, you know, we pour in what we do, but we just never know how it's all gonna turn out. We just don't, right? And so I mean, I almost passed out when I saw Enrique. To know that he heard what we talked about in that class and is now advocating for himself to follow his passion, his bliss, to work in culinary arts, that's incredible. And I'm suspecting he'll end up being a sous chef or a business owner, much like Kaya. And I think that's, y'all, like that's gotta be some good news. That's gotta be some good news. Then the next day, I went to my very first quinceañera for another of my former Jefferson Middle School students, Louisa. She sent this office an invite for me to attend, and to see someone who sat in that Jefferson Middle School class in the 7th grade, a Title I school, meaning most of the kids qualify for free or reduced lunch, right? We all know what the news says about these kids, but I just always believed that if you just sit and listen to them and then bring curriculum to them that they might actually find engaging, which we did. We played a lot of Legend of Zelda in there. And it worked like a charm. I used that to teach them storytelling, like a charm. And now here they are. And I'm gonna have to incorporate those two memories of that quinceañera and that Metro Tech in my brain when I start to feel those feelings of depression that you're talking about, when I look at what life is like right now for the whole globe, right? So I just wanted to say thank you to Enrique and to Louisa. I also, our Ward 5, David's not here, Greenwell. Our Ward 5 council person, the youth counselor, they were there too and recognized me that day and came up and was like, let me tell you what we're doing, and this is, they are so appreciative of city staff. They have learned so much from you all, and I just wanted to share that. And I really wanted to say thank you for listening to our kiddos and treating them like the human beings that eventually, as they grow up and become the adults, like, thank you for that investment in them. And so in that way, thank you to Debbie Martin for always being such a steward of our youth council. The only other two things I wanted to say with that is I still am very interested in picking up where Mayor Holt's State of the City address in January in 2020, a simpler time.
February 27th.
Was it February? Good memory. It's all a blur for me now. I just remember at your State of the City, you mentioned we wanted to focus on education. And when I see what OKCPS has accomplished by investing in the Avid College Prep program where I taught, when I look at their new investments in mental health services, I really want to build on that. And I've always wanted to do that before the pandemic, but now with the pandemic and the labor shortage, I'm becoming more aware that even with President Biden's bipartisan infrastructure project, which is so cool, so much of that money is going to complement the investments we've made at the Better Street, Safer City level and at the MAPS 4 level. But we are experiencing the same labor shortage that the rest of the country is. When it comes to who's going to be doing the welding, the electrical work, the plumbing, all of it. And I'm going to sound like the broken record player here, but I really want to see our city as an entity, the city of OKC, step up and really think about how do we, similar to the way Phil Maytubby talked about taking that mobile clinic out to the people, I think we have to go out to our families and tell them about the fact that they can go to Metro Tech until they're 21 years old for free. That similar programs exist at OCCC. And we need to connect our residents. We need to bring services to our people. That language really stood out to me earlier. And we can't just rely on social media. We can't just rely on local news. I really want to challenge us on this horseshoe, public information. We've got to think outside the box. I don't have the answers entirely, but I know there was something about that language of bringing services to the people that is resonating with me this morning. And if Enrique and Luisa and our Ward 5 youth counselor can find ways to utilize these sorts of services to better themselves and their lives, then we need to find out how to bring those services to the rest of our city. Because in conclusion, not only will this help us address our labor shortage, but Councilman Carter's concern about the depression and the sadness, which not only has this pandemic brought, but it was there all along, if we're really being honest. If we're really being honest and we think about the substance abuse, there was always a rot at the core. And I have always believed that if we could connect people with their passions and give them a reason to wake up in the morning, then they'd want to wake up the next morning too. And so this work of connecting our students and our families to these educational services, I think can save lives and continue to better our city. So after the holidays, would like to touch base with our city manager and our mayor about your thoughts on education and how we can connect folk to these services. I just think it's very important. So happy holidays, please be safe, and thanks for the opportunity to serve you all.
Thank you. Ward 3.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only comments I have today are just to appreciate city staff that will be working through the holidays while the rest of us are at home opening presents, and all of the support that they have given us as new council members over the last 8 months, answering an abundance of questions. I wish everyone a very Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays, and be safe.
Thank you. Ward 4.
Yeah, I just wanted to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Again, it's a great time of year for us all to think about what we're thankful for and to think about, what we can do for others. So, thank you.
Thank you. Ward 6.
Yes, I have just a few things to mention. I think a Friday before last, I got to attend the Parks and Rec Department's production of Gem of the Ocean at the Civic Center, which was really fun to see. It was something that it sort of just popped up last minute in my purview, and was really neat to see young people and older folk. It was just a really neat representation of just community theater and some really, just reading the program, seeing how little many of the actors, how little they've acted, that they're very new to the craft, and just the level of the production was just incredible. Especially, not just because, but especially because a few of them had only been acting for a year or two. And to take on an August Wilson, I think is I don't know, I know I would want to try it. So just really, really awesome, and would love to see more things like that happen, especially connecting more and different types of folks to the Civic Center, and the different spaces that we have within that facility is a neat opportunity. I also got to, if you're not aware, Lyric Theater is hosting the Christmas Carol at Hearn Homestead, and I got to go see that. I had a real big theater weekend that weekend, and I know there's just a few days left, so if you haven't gone and have been maybe toying with the idea, I really encourage you. They've really sort of rethought, and I know it was sort of in response to the pandemic last year, but continuing on using that space, I think really breathes new life into that story, and helps maybe highlight the lessons that we might sort of gloss over otherwise when we just have seen it a million times. And sort of flowing into that, I really do want to just highlight, I know, I think this weekend was the first sort of call to action for our cold weather emergency shelter for people who are unsheltered. We haven't had a lot of cold days, but the days that we have that have been cold have been very cold, especially after the sun goes down. So just really appreciate all the city staff, and I know a lot of the service agencies in the community that have been working to put that plan together, and just were ready to hit go when we started reaching low temperatures. And sort of adjacent to that, I recently have been in conversation with some of our the staff at the Homeless Alliance and some of our other service agencies, and have been just shocked to learn that they've been having incredible difficulty finding units for people that have vouchers in hand. Usually it's the other way around, where people are just on that waiting list forever, and or there's funding that there's not funding rather. But with a lot of the federal assistance, with different grants that have become available, there's almost an abundance of resources, but the difficulty of finding places that will lease to these clients is really squeezed. So right now or at least as of last Tuesday, there were 24 clients that Homeless Alliance alone had that had vouchers in hand with landlord incentives, I will say. So not just monthly rent, but additional dollars on top of that for retention bonuses, essentially, that they cannot find a unit for. So these are folks that are living outside. Maybe they're utilizing some of our shelter resources or sleeping on couches, but most likely they are street homeless. And I just want to sort of remind everyone that it really does take a community, because the fact that housing is a commodity in our society means that we literally have resources for people and nowhere to put them, because the market is, and according to a developer I spoke to yesterday, all out of whack is a direct quote from him. So I've been talking to some folks, some developers and property managers to discuss maybe partnering and kind of looking at what they can be doing. But just a reminder that, this time of year, but all times of year, we should be recognizing that people living without homes is a much more complicated situation than any of us can put a finger on, and so just compassion and kindness is always, I would hope, the response to that, to folks that are struggling in that position, especially when, again, they have resources available, and people can make more money elsewhere, I guess, and so that's what they're going with. So Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Ward 7.
I just want to, I have a few comments. With that, I wanted to reemphasize what I heard from our previous council members. One, with MetroTech, I took a tour the day before that we had Councilperson Cooper, and I also went through that culinary department, and one of the things that I actually noticed was the fact that we had young people studying alongside adults. So that integration of generations being able to learn from each other was what I saw in the importance of being able to see the impact of that in one learning environment. And that kitchen looks amazing, by the way. It is a state-of-the-art kitchen, and unfortunately I did miss Kaya Fletcher. She was there the next day, but I was able to experience some of the other staff that was there and also take part. They had some nice goodies that we got to take with us that were quite delicious. And I was able to tour the cosmetology building, the STEM building, where young people are learning and receiving college credit from Wichita State University. So with that, I am hoping we can figure out a way where we can have more local college credits instead of having to take our talent outside of our state, pertaining to some of those engineering type of degrees. That was the specialty that these young people are learning, as far as calculus and different aspects of math, science, and engineering. And also learning more about their health career building, and seeing also what we're looking at as far as the infrastructure, which is behind the Metro Technology Campus on 36 and Martin Luther King, wanting to ensure that we have funding to complete the job as far as those drainage areas are concerned, because it is
not attractive to see what is happening right there in that corridor, and I'm hoping we can explore, if we do not have the funding, which I believe that we were working on complete funding for that, that we get that taken care of instead of having two manholes, and fencing around it. That is not pleasing, and anyone that passes by that should be concerned about what's happening over there. Also, Gym on the Ocean, I went to see it the last day. I went to go see it on December the 12th, so I also wanted to commend our Parks Department, because I understand this is the first time they've done something of this magnitude funded through our Parks Department for theater. And Naisha Morris, I wanted to commend her from our Parks Department for bringing this together. Isaiah Williams, the director. And we also had our Ward 7 youth council member was in the play. She was in the play. So I do want to say Michaela Hammond, she did a great job. And for those who are listening, I want to also congratulate her. She's a student at Cristo Rey, and she has been accepted to 34 colleges. And she's from Ward 7. So, you know, you got to brag on our young people when they have the desire to do these things, and for her to be accepted into 34 colleges and know what she wants to do, and being a young person who talks about how she was adopted by her mom's sister and still did not let those things stop her from ultimately becoming this young woman and blossoming into this great young woman that she has become. I'm very excited for her future and to see where she goes from here. And as we talk about the loss, I also wanted to wanted us to keep in our thoughts Bob Sheets, who was an attorney with Phillips Murrah. And I bring him up because he was one of my friends and one of my customers. I met him as a customer first at Starbucks. And we would talk about baseball every single time he came in, because he's an avid St. Louis Cardinals fan. And I'm a Cincinnati Reds fan. So we would talk about this all the time. And I had no idea of what he did in our city. I just knew him by Bob. Made his drink, and he'd stand there for a little while and talk to me about sports. And our relationship and friendship evolved with me being on the board for Heartline after doing United Way board serve, and meeting him in that capacity and becoming more familiar with him, and talking to him on different subjects, including the work we were doing through Heartline. So when he rolled off the board before I did, and he ended up coming back to the board because he loved it so much, and the commitment and the mission of Heartline. So when I received that news and that text message that he had suddenly passed away, it was definitely devastating to hear. And I definitely want to continue to keep his family in my thoughts, because I know he was a pillar as far as the things that he did in practicing law. And even as a council member, he did come here a couple times. I've seen him here talking about different people he was representing, depending on what the situation was. So he will truly be missed in our city. Another person that I wanted us to also keep in our thoughts as far as the family is concerned is our first African-American city manager, Terry Childers, who served for a few years in our city in the 1990s. And I would say, I guess that's probably one of the most progressive times we've had for us to have an African-American as a city manager. And it's unfortunate that we can only say we had one. But I am asking and requesting that we do something to honor the legacy of Mr. Childers in our city, because that clearly changed the trajectory of what we are looking at. And even just talking to Ms. Debbie yesterday, she says one of the reasons that she ended up in a city council office was because of him and his leadership, for us to have a city council office and for us to have a public information office. So these are things that we rely on for our city, that this gentleman had the fortitude to bring forward and change and implement for our city as well. So I'm requesting that we look into a way to acknowledge him as our past city manager. And it's unfortunate that we have to honor him after he's not with us instead of doing that before, while he could have smelled those flowers. So I do hope we'll do something with that. Ralph Ellison Library is celebrating 100 years, and I do want to commend, and I know there's some things happening with that, so if you know anyone that has been a part of Dunbar Library, as it was called before, we'd love to get those things on paper so we can talk about them. Garden Neighborhood Council, I just wanted to say thank you to the president last night. Previous council member and I rode around judging Christmas lights in the neighborhood. So we are excited that we were able to see a lot of those homes and being able to support them in those lights. And it was some good stuff to see as well. A couple more things. I just wanted to reemphasize the Christmas Carol that is at Harn Homestead with Lyric Theater. If you have not seen it, please do. And Kwanzaa's coming up, and we're kicking off Kwanzaa on this Sunday at the Black Star Urban Cultural Center Market. And also want to thank, and was a part of the giveaway to help bless a lot of folks in our community, Ebenezer Baptist Church. The line never stopped once it started, and I believe people were staying overnight in the parking lot just so they could see or receive the things that were being given away. And there was furniture, all kind of things. And again, it speaks to the need of where we are with people and how we can meet them where they are as well. Last thing, East End tree lighting happened on this past Friday at Kindred, and I want to thank everyone that was a part of that, as well as Northeast Renaissance and everyone that helped to sponsor that event. It was great, it was wonderful, and I'm so thankful that we were able to do that for our community, and we hope to make it bigger and better next year. So with that being said, happy holidays to everyone, happy Kwanzaa, and looking forward to bigger and better things for 2022 for our city.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes comments from council. And now we're at item 13, which is citizens to be heard. We have 3 who have signed up to speak. We'll do Ronnie Kirk and then Joy. Joy, if you want to kind of get ready. I think you all know the drill. State your name and address and keep your remarks to 3 minutes or less.
My name is Ronnie Kirk from 2328 North Missouri, here in Oklahoma, Ward 7. 2 weeks ago, I went to Boley, Oklahoma. I had Boley's 3rd annual rodeo booklet. So I took that book back to Boley. I met with the mayor, chief of police, the lady of the, I can't even think, Chamber of Commerce. Also had an insert in the papers I gave y'all 2 weeks ago, how to teach people how to comply when stopped by the police. I talked to the mayor of Boley. She said they're planning on having Boley's Rodeo. And they're gonna do that, teaching how to people how to comply when stopped by the police. Also, Miss Meeks, she's over the Chamber of Commerce in Langston, Oklahoma. Langston has a small police department, but they have a huge population of kids going to the college. They're going to implement teaching kids how to comply to police. But today, I still come back wanting to adopt that every school gym. You know, I was watching 2020. The forecaster, the meteorologist, he was so nervous when he saw the destruction of what this tornado is going to cause. He couldn't even text in Mansfield. He was so concerned about the people that he couldn't even remember to text in Mansfield. He seen all the destruction. They had warning what this tornado was going to do. It was in one of the tornado went through 6 different states.
30 seconds remaining.
Stayed on the ground for 162 miles. Had so much destruction. You know, here in Oklahoma City, we got every school. School been closed for 4 years. The gym was built to withstand the F5 tornado. We have a place to go. I still want to adopt that center, that gym, so we can open it up when a tornado's coming. You know, when they give a forecast, they give you minute by minute where it's going to hit. You have plenty of time to go there to the people that want to go, that need to go. Y'all seen all the destruction this tornado, it came through Oklahoma first. We still in tornado alleys. Tornadoes gonna come every year, not every once in a while. We don't know where they're gonna hit at. So our organization will still adopt that center.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kirk.
Thanks a lot.
Happy holidays. Joy Reardon, followed by Allison Tate.
Joy Reardon, 125 Northwest 9th, Oklahoma City. Do y'all realize what today is? The date? It's a special day, if you think about it.
Oh, is
if you flip the month around, it's 21, 21, 21. It's a special date. We've had 2 special dates this year alone. 2, 21, 21. Councilman Nice, I knew Mr. Carter. He was a supervisor. What little people don't know is he was a supervisor for sanitation department. He actually gave me a chance. So I do thank you. The other thing is we have a lot of, most people don't realize is we have a lot of intersections that have the curb cutouts, but nothing else. They go up, they go back down, no sidewalks. If we could look into that, Councilman Cooper. We need more ADA access. We're doing good, but we're still got some. And on the street list that come up earlier in the council meeting, there's a lot of city streets that severely need to be looked at, because a lot of those places that was on the list to get resurfaced, about 3 years ago, a lot of them were resurfaced. They're not really all that bad of shape, but the street in front of my building, 9th Street, from Broadway to Walker, really needs to be looked at. And everybody from St. Anthony's Hospital uses it as a thoroughfare, and it's getting to be dangerous. They'll race from Broadway to Robinson very quickly, and they don't stop at Robinson, a lot of them. They do what is known as a California stop. They slow down, look, and then keep going. The residents of my building, there's several of us that are in wheelchairs and stuff, and we like going across the street. Someone's going to either get run over or they're going to die. If we could get something done about that.
30 seconds remaining.
That's really all I've got, but it's the ADA issue, as y'all know, I will keep coming every time I see an ADA issue and stuff like that to remind y'all that we celebrated 31 years. Not so much ambulatory people used as a sidewalk, people in wheelchairs, people like my chair, walkers, canes. We have an aging population that's only going to get more aged, get a lot more younger, I should say, that we really should look at these sidewalk issues. I counted 13 just within the downtown Oklahoma City area that has the up and downs that need to really be looked at. Thank you.
Thank you, Joy. Happy holidays.
And happy holidays to everybody.
And then Allison Tate.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak, Mayor, city staff, and council members. I'm a school social worker, and I'm at middle schools, Star Spencer, and also Rogers. So everything you said, Councilman Cooper, just really resonated with me. And hi, Councilwoman Nice. So I'm here because as a citizen, and actually, Councilman Stone is my council member, so I'm disappointed that he stepped out and didn't come back. But I'm in Ward 4, and so I want to talk about requesting free indoor walking for the South Side. I called Parks and Recs yesterday, and I was told that we have no indoor walking facilities for people under 50 years old on the south side of the city. And my address is 5900 Southeast 88th Street, Oklahoma City. So I'm off of Sooner Road and 89th Street. So I apologize for not doing that first. I have to drive to go to Penn Square Mall. I have to drive 20 minutes and 17 miles to walk inside Penn Square in the winter. I have to go to North Park Mall, which is 29 minutes and 25 miles away. That's where I went yesterday when I talked to Parks and Rec, and the day before I was at Penn Square. The day before I was at Penn Square, I went to Quail Springs Mall. That's 28 minutes and 24 miles away. And a couple weeks ago, I was walking at Sooner Mall, which is 21 minutes and 18 miles away. Now, I live near Crossroads Mall. Of course, that's closed. It was the place to be when I was growing up, and it's only 12 minutes and 5 miles away from where I live. I also live near Heritage Park Mall, which is 16 minutes and 7 miles away from where I live. I know that's Midwest City. So I have to drive 3 to 5 times as far to get to the other 3 malls, Penn Square, North Park, or Quail Springs, than I would if I had accessibility to indoor walking space on the south side. So I know one of your mandates, I saw your template out there outside your banner, and one of the mandates is to enhance recreation and community wellness opportunities. I am technically morbidly obese, and I have type 2 diabetes. I'm working on that, and I'm excited to be working on that. I'm working with a wholeness and wellness person as well to change my lifestyle, to change my eating habits. I'm on a roll, so I would hate to be deterred by not having an accessible place to go to on the south side where I live. Please don't forget about us. And so if you all can give my remarks to Mr. Stone, I would greatly appreciate it. But I also wanted to note that I looked at the news story, Channel 9, said that of the top 100 cities, big cities in the country, Oklahoma City ranks last. We're 100, and Tulsa is 99. So I hear a lot about wanting to do wellness. I hear a lot about wanting to do better, wanting to be a better city. I love the renaissance that's happening right now, but I really think that you need to remember that you do have citizens on the south side of the city. It would be wonderful if Crossroads could be reopened for walking accessibility. Indoor space. The only indoor space is for the elderly, people 50 and older on the southwest side of the city, and you have to be a member of that location off of Walker. So think about us, consider us, please include us when you do your planning, because I really feel left out. And I would like to continue my wellness and fitness journey, and I would like to not have to drive 30 miles, 20 miles to do that. Thank you.
All right, that concludes citizens to be heard. We now have executive session on 2 items, after which we will certainly return, but we may also have votes on those two potentially have votes on those 2 items as well. All right, we're going to executive session. Okay, we have returned from executive session, and we still have two items for consideration as previously discussed. The first is item 11V1. That is a second extension of collective bargaining agreement with the Fraternal Order of Police, Lodge 1, 2, 3, et cetera. What would the council wish to do with that extension?
Before we cast this vote, I do just want a couple comments on this item and why I will be voting no. We are in the middle, as residents know, of receiving the recommendations from the Law Enforcement Task Force, the Community Policing Resolution folk, and many of their recommendations do not fit within the context of this this extension, and so I'm going to continue that work. And so I feel in this moment I can't support this item because I do not think it's in the best interest of our neighborhoods, our residents, or law enforcement, and that's the work I'm committed to. So, thanks.
Okay.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Yes.
What happens if you don't extend the contract?
And you don't have a contract?
And you have no contract?
Wiley?
Fortunately, we've never been in that position before, but you just don't have a contract, and if there's a dispute, each party can assert its own points. You could not stop paying them. We hopefully wouldn't get into that. I mean,
Right. I don't think that would be in the best interests of our neighborhoods, is part of the point I was trying to make there.
I appreciate the point, and as I said, we know the work that we have to do, so thank you. Look forward to doing it with you.
Okay, if there's no other comments, what does the council wish to do with the extension? We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes, and it feels necessary to mention with so few people here that this just requires a simple majority of those present. Passes 6-1. Okay, the other item is 11AA1, resolution authorizing the municipal council to commence an action in the Oklahoma County District Court seeking a declaration of the rights between the City of OKC and the FOP pursuant to the Fire and Police Arbitration Act regarding arbitrator Peter Clark's award, et cetera. Are there any comments on this, or do we wish to plunge forward? Okay. What does the council wish to do with the resolution? We have a motion and a second. And there it is. A motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. That concludes our business. We are now at item 14, adjournment. Merry Christmas and happy holidays. We are adjourned.